we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you this special report. Video games. Where is this all headed? I'm Shane Satterfield, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Matt Kyle.
Hello, and welcome to GameFace episode 100. Do not attempt to adjust your television because we are on the internet, and your television isn't going to affect anything here.
Do not attempt to adjust your brain either, because we're not going to talk like this the whole episode. So
thank God.
Welcome to GameFace 100, everybody. A milestone episode for us. Didn't know if we'd make it, but we did. And we have a special episode for you guys. Usually, GameFace is really topical. We talk about the games that came out that week or the controversial stories or whatever.
And this time, we're going to talk about the gaming news from 1955.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
Pinball. Should it have bumpers? Discuss.
This episode's a little different. Instead of talking about kind of the big stuff that happened this week, we're going to discuss games on a bigger, more longer-reaching scale. We're going to kind of look at what are the big trends that are going on right now, what we think is going to happen in the immediate future, and the far distant future. And to do that, we have two very special guests on the show today. And just right out of the gate, these are not live interviews with these people. These were pre-recorded, but pre-recorded intelligently so that they would seamlessly fit into the show.
But it was like, we couldn't arrange for everybody to be in one place, so this was the best way to get all these people that I think everybody wants to see on one show.
Yep, and those people are Marcus Beer and Adam Sessler. So we have huge interviews with both these guys that are going to talk about a range of controversial and forward-thinking topics. And I think both interviews great, and they're all going to be kind of told within the context of a discussion with Matt and I. So without further ado, let's get going. One of the first things we wanted to talk about with both of them is what they're doing now. Because we haven't seen either one of these guys for quite a while. Marcus has been MIA for a couple years. Obviously, he's had health issues. Adam is off doing his own business. So the first thing I wanted to ask was, what's resonating with you right now in the world of video games? Let's hear what Adam had to say.
I'm really seeing kind of a future for games that kind of downplays so much the competitive nature, where you're appreciating the skill that people are employing. Because that can be really hard, especially with a game like Dota, where if you're not understanding the very kind of arcane logic that's there in front of, on the screen, you really don't know what you're looking at. Here, there's natural dramatic storytelling that's happening organically, and you can get very, very excited without having to know much about the game.
So do you think it's sort of the asymmetrical multiplayer thing? Because remember, there was Evolve, which was kind of the first big-budget game that kind of went down that route, and it failed pretty terribly. What do you think is different this time, and do you think that's really kind of the next step forward?
I don't know how much is on the asymmetry, and one of the issues I see with Evolve is it required, once again, a fair amount of unique skill. You had to really understand the class that you were playing. You had to really, work very well with the people you were playing with. I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with the design of Evolve, is that it made assumptions of a player base that didn't exist. And that I've seen good players play Evolve, and it can be very exciting. It's fun to watch. And it is fun to watch because you have to bring the players together. Whereas you look at something like PUBG, it's very, very hard, but it's hard not for accessibility. It's hard just to play. Same thing for Friday the 13th. And I think, that's where the trick is. You can get in there. You understand, how you're supposed to win, and you can understand why you're going to lose. But it's like trying to just, find that really, really sort of narrow path to victory. That's where the challenge is, not understanding how to play the game itself.
Do you think the difference between success and failure in asymmetrical games is having to rely on other people versus only having to rely upon yourself, maybe?
I think that's a big chunk of it. I think that's true for actually most co-op experiences, or with some element of co-op, even though there's a competitive angle to it, is that, and we just know this from just old co-op games, that if you're playing with someone that's not playing along and it's just kind of there, it really does ruin the experience. I think that's why, even kind of games like Destiny started to move towards the idea that you're only going to do certain things with people because your friends usually won't be that rock you have to carry, or if it is, it still makes it for a more fun experience.
Yeah, that was the problem I found with Evolve, was that if you got paired up with someone who didn't understand the role they were playing and how that linked into the team dynamic, it ended up just being a wasted time. Literally, just you were wasting your time.
And if you were a player who you realized you were not helping out the team that much, I think for non-sociopaths, you just feel terrible and you just don't go back to playing the game.
You're right. That's a good point.
Matt, do you think maybe a little bit of Adam's involvement with Friday the 13th, the game, is creeping into...
Maybe a little, but I mean, that kind of multiplayer idea has always been, I know, very compelling to him in general, which is probably why he got involved with Friday the 13th in the first place.
Right.
And I like that idea a lot, too. I mean, I played Evolve at multiple events and thought it was great, and I was super,
Everybody did.
super
It
excited
won Game
about
of
it.
E3 the one year.
And then I didn't buy it because, I mean, he's right that, like, you know, there's the concern about, are you going to have people to play with? Is it going to, you know, you got to learn a lot of stuff. Is like, are other people going to keep it alive long enough for you to become good at it? But my problem with it was, like, they, you know, 2K really nickel and dime people on this one. And, like, you had this feeling like you were paying $60 for a game that wasn't complete because they were still waiting to sell you this other monster and these other characters and this season pass for this and there's another season pass and there's that. And it was kind of one of the first console games, at least, to really try to do that. Now it's like we don't blink and bat an eye like Street Fighter V as Season 2 and so on.
Right.
But this really didn't feel like a good value for the money you were spending in a lot of ways. And maybe that's different now. I don't know. But back then, I just couldn't justify spending $60 or more, depending on which version you got, to get what wasn't really even it really felt like, you know, there's a common complaint about, like, oh, you're not getting the full game. They're piecemealing things out. This really felt like they were really doing that. A lot of times I'm skeptical of that claim because I'm like, well, they get a full game. There's little bells and whistles you have to pay extra for. This really felt like you were paying like more than the price of the game just to get the basics, and I just ended up staying away from it.
I think the biggest problem facing asymmetrical multiplayer games is that you're always reliant upon someone else. Mm-hmm. And I find I have the same problem with Rocket League when I play Rocket League online. It's, if you have one weak link in the chain, the whole experience can be ruined. I can't stand to play.
Oh, you should try playing Destiny 2's countdown mode.
Yeah.
It's like the same, you know, which is like any kind of mode like that where it's like, especially with like permadeath.
Yeah.
Or like a SOCOM style thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you got one guy, you know, if it becomes essentially due to either lack of skill or lack of interest on the part of one of your teammates, if it essentially becomes 4-on-3 in favor of them, that's not fun.
Yeah.
And like an asymmetrical game like Evolve, you can play the monster just fine on your own. If you're Jason in Friday the 13th, you're good.
But you can't always choose to play those.
Choose to play those, although only one person gets to be that.
Right.
And if you've got somebody that doesn't, you know, it's not the same thing as like, oh, this person isn't good at it yet. It's just like they're not playing properly.
Or griefing, intentionally ruining the game for other people. And Evolve especially. I mean, I don't want to dwell on this game too much because I think Adam's more general point is it kind of asymmetrical is what he's enjoying right now. And this is an old example of that. But with Evolve in particular, the way you had to set traps and things like that and how every player had sort of a specific thing that they had to do to satisfy the end game conditions, I think it was just set up to fail from the beginning. You're asking way too much of randoms at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea of asymmetrical multiplayer. I find it very compelling.
The concept sounds great.
I just haven't seen it done in a way that, because I think Friday the 13th does it very well. Maybe even better than Dead by Daylight, which beat it to market. Mm-hmm. But I still don't see it being like a breakout, like, you know, 7 million selling hit. Like, it's like whatever that is hasn't been found yet, and maybe it's a mode that'll pop up in a Call of Duty game one day, or another popular thing, or maybe some permutation that PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds comes up with in the next 2 years.
Or another game comes up with trying to imitate PUBG, which could very well happen.
I mean, you never know. Like Rocket League came about just because they were doing a little stunt car game, and someone's like, put a ball in there.
See what happens.
Boom! And magic happened. Yep. So somewhere out there's a game developer who has the correct idea that's going to send asymmetrical multiplayer through the roof. It just hasn't happened yet.
It's close.
You can taste it. It's right there on the edge. And it could be one of these other games. You know, maybe Friday the 13th hits on something.
Yeah.
At some point, maybe, you know, Evolve.
It's been pretty successful.
Evolve wasn't too far off something. I don't think. I think if they had not gone the extreme pre-order DLC route and not alienated so much of the hardcore
and poisoned
gamers.
the well.
Yeah, basically
the
like
game
people
came out.
wouldn't even give it a try because they felt like they're getting ripped off. Like that. I mean, it's hard for me to blame Evolve itself for its own failure. I mean, it already had a uphill climb, as you say, with how much you have to rely on other players and how much learning is involved. But the fact that you had this huge other barrier thrown up by the publisher in terms of how they wanted to charge you for the content, I mean, you were 3 levels back at that point, and it was doomed. Yep.
All right, let's find out what Marcus has been up to these last couple of years.
Ooh. I mean, I got the PlayStation VR. And look, I've been saying for years that VR is the next big thing. VR is the way forward for games. I mean, some will say it's esports and shit like that. I say no. I love the PSVR. Star Trek Bridge Commander. It's not exactly the most technically challenging, super advanced, intricate game, but when there's 4 of you on a Tuesday night with some substances being consumed by some people, and a scotch or 2 as well for me. It's brilliant. I mean, just getting through the various missions, talking, bullshitting. I mean, you and I talked about was it the Werewolves Among Us or the Wolf Among Us, whatever it's called?
Wolf Among Us,
yeah. And that's great. I mean, it is really, really a shit ton of fun. And I heartily recommend it. I mean, I'm hoping that Sony continue to do a bunch of VR stuff. I mean, obviously, Fallout VR is about to hit, and which means that now, after 2 years of playing Fallout 4 on my laptop, I'm now going back to go and put it on the PS4 because I want to play I want to play that. And I got to say, VR, if you're going to get it on a PC now that the prices are down, or get it on the PlayStation, and hopefully Microsoft will come with something beyond HoloLens. That's the way forward, and I'm a big fan. It needs to come down in price. It really does.
Have you found yourself having any problems with motion sickness?
No.
You're lucky.
Not at all, which I did with the very first iteration of Oculus. The very first time I tried it, I got the demo on the Bethesda booth, and it was Doom 3 for VR. And I've made the crack over the years that VR must be amazing because it made Doom 3 playable and enjoyable. But it did make me motion sick. And this time around, I don't have any issues. And look, I mean, I'm on the specs now pretty much full time, wearing the glasses, and I can wear my glasses in there, no problem. I really, really dig it. So.
I know you don't know Marcus as well as I do, but are you surprised at all to hear that that's kind of what he's into?
A little bit. I mean, he's enough of a curmudgeon that I would have thought him to be way more skeptical.
Right.
And I mean, I agree. And I remember when he was on this show before, and like he would, he also said then VR is the future, and I agree that VR is the future. I just don't know if it's the future yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, we've talked about this before with the Vive and PSVR, where it's like, one day, yes, this is going to get there. Yeah. I don't know if it's this generation.
Well, I mean, he's not even talking about in this context about it being the future. This is what he thinks is now.
Right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. I mean, I think it's. I think the main takeaway there is it's still too expensive.
Yeah.
For what it is, and I think
even with the price drops, it just.
I mean, now it's just only a slightly ridiculous expensive thing. It's like.
We are kind of getting into a pricing war here, though.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I have had 3 people I know get a PSVR this week.
Wow.
So the price drop put a few people over the fence, definitely. Yeah. There's definitely interest there. The other thing I'm keeping my eye on is the new Star Wars lightsaber training thing they announced on Force Friday 2 on September 1st, which is it's $200. It's a headset that you put any phone in. And then you have like an actual lightsaber handle, and you go in and basically you fight. You train with the lightsaber, and you can also fight various characters from the Star Wars movies. And people who tried it, I think at Dragon Con, were basically saying, like, yeah, it's legit. It's pretty good. And I think that's one of the ways you're going to start seeing it start to make some inroads, because $200 is a lot of money for a thing like that. But it's still, people spend $150 on those stupid little BB-8 things. I did. Apparently Marcus did, because there's one behind him in that shot. And if you can do that again, it's like if you can do that again and get these cheaper ones into people's homes and they experience it as a good thing that everybody likes and they find worth the money, that's how you get more expensive and higher
Trojan
quality
horse.
experience. You Trojan horse it in. So I'll keep an eye on that. But I mean, he's right, and it's also there's a hunger for it. I think, because at PAX this past weekend, the line to try Bethesda's VR stuff was 3.5 hours long.
Do you think
I mean,
part
people
of that,
want it. A lot of people just can't afford it.
But do you think and look, it was the same way at E3.
Yeah.
The line for Bethesda's VR was insane. But do you think that might be just because people know they're never going to buy VR, and so they want to experience it?
I mean, that might be part of it. But I mean, that's dangerous, because that was my attitude when I tried it at E3 a couple years ago, and I came out of that after playing Star Trek Bridge Crew and a couple other things, being like, I need this.
Yeah.
Like, if you go in there and you love it, there's nothing like convincing you that maybe it's not that expensive than having those experiences. So yeah, I mean, go ahead and wait 3 hours in line for it if you're like, oh, this is my only chance to ever play it. But like, I warn you, you might walk out feeling like maybe it's not that because it can
Which
be a
isn't
powerful
a bad
experience.
thing. I mean,
I
people
think that's
shouldn't feel guilty
right.
for.
But I can think that's what part of what Marcus is saying is, like, you know, especially near the tail end of his time here, he seemed very disillusioned with the sameness of everything. And I think VR, even, you know, and I don't get that way about, you know, I still enjoy the same thing over and over again, except unless you're Agents of Mayhem. But like, one of the things I like about VR is it gives me things I've never. I think, you know, Adam's right, and a couple other people I've heard, and I say it too, that it's a different medium. It's not a video game. It's not just another way of playing video games. It's a different medium in the way games are different from TV or movies. And
I don't think someone will get that until they own an HMD.
Yeah, it's hard to get your mind around that idea, because early on it feels like saying that 3D movies aren't the same as movies, but it's not that. It's a totally different approach.
Well, people watch the trailers on SIFTD or YouTube or whatever, and all the trailers are in 2D, so the games look the same, but
they don't look very good.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they look like a last-gen game in a lot of cases, and so you're not getting the immersion from it, and that is the difference maker for VR. So that's the tough sell for VR, though. You can't convey it without somebody.
And it's just the hardest thing is like how, you know, the simplest thing done well in VR can be enthralling.
Yeah.
In a way that just playing a 2D normal game with that same mechanic would be boring.
Yeah.
And it's like I've said, I think pretty much from the beginning, is like, you have to get people to try this. You have to set it up in kiosks.
We've been saying that a long time.
You have to set it up in arcades. It has to be something someone can go and try and experience and say, I want that whenever I want to play it. I want it to be in my home.
I'll say this. I was just in Las Vegas a few weekends ago, and there were VR stores everywhere. And they'd have 3 or 4 chairs out in front of the store, and people could sit down and try VR. And they weren't even selling it there. It was like you paid X amount of dollars to do it for 30 minutes or whatever.
I think that's probably the next vape shop.
Yeah,
is VR arcade kind of things. Yeah. And I say that both in the sense that I think you're going to see explosive growth, and then you're going to see them just collapse,
dissolve,
like a plant in a cupboard. Yeah. It's,
you're right.
But I would say that's probably going to be the next like flash in the pan retail experience is VR. Like pay by the hour or something, kind of like PC Cafe.
And then you have like group things where you all go together and team building.
Can't wait for the Groupon, boys. It's going to be great.
All right, now that we've caught up with Adam and Marcus as far as what they're into right now, it's time to take at least a half step into the future and talk about Xbox One X. And the first thing I wanted to ask both of them was, are they just going to buy it? Let's hear from Adam.
Assuming I have the available income, yes. I have a 4K TV. I do kind of enjoy things looking really, really sharp. I also like this idea of the iteration. What I'm looking forward to is the period of time where we really start to treat them more like an Apple device or an Android device, where you don't plan on getting every iteration. You probably plan on getting every other or maybe every third. That, you know, it's just, once again, it's like, I'm ready to upgrade, and you upgrade into something, and you're not just starting this massive reset. Where once again, like a game like the original Destiny, that had to serve both worlds, both the PS3 and the PS4, and I think the game did suffer as a result of it, You just take a look at sort of how Destiny 2 looks, and it's benefiting that it's like kind of it's designing for just one battlefield, not two.
Adam, do you see an issue? The PlayStation 4 Pro, which was kind of the first example of this, has not sold especially well. It's being outsold by the base PS4 several multitudes. Do you think consumers are ready for this? I mean, you look at the business model of an Apple or a Samsung, where it's kind of used to saying, okay, well, we're putting out the iPhone 7, and we don't expect it to sell as well as the iPhone 6. That business is kind of used to that cyclical pattern where it's like, okay, we release this one that's kind of the landmark release, and then we do iterations. Do you think the console market is ready to adapt to that from the business perspective and also from the consumer's perspective?
I do think so. I mean, I would at the moment look at the PS4 Pro as something of a loss leader. It helped prime the consumer for the idea that this is what we're going to do. I mean, there still aren't that many 4K sets out there. And I think most people can see through the rhetoric that, you know, if you only can do 1080p, this really isn't that necessary a device for you. It really only starts to show its benefits if you have a screen that can do a higher resolution. But it started to put into people's minds, hey, 4K is becoming the standard. And that somewhere down the line, as we see the prices drop on the TV, with the purchase of that TV will then come the purchase of, be it the Xbox One X or the PS4 Pro. I think I don't know if Sony really expected it to explode. I think over time it will start to grow. There is the flip side that maybe I thought Microsoft's strategy with Xbox One X by kind of announcing it, you know, the same year that the PS4 Pro was coming out, was a good way to kind of say there's something even more powerful down the line that could be eating into the sales. I don't know, but I've heard tale that the Xbox One X is pre-selling quite well, so that could be happening. I'm a little bit unclear, but I think we're doing the right thing starting early and not judge it on the initial sales, because I think we'll start to see the benefits in the next year and probably the year after that.
Do you think that consumers might be scared because they know that there might be a bigger step coming on down the line? Getting these iterative consoles, do you think consumers might say, hey, well, I'm just going to wait till the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox 2?
No, and I think that's really fair. I think one of the things that both Sony and Microsoft would really benefit from is to say, like, hey, we have put our flag in the ground and we're not going to do that massive overhaul where there will be games that cannot play on a piece of tech. What I think will happen over time is, I mean, I know neither of these companies love making hardware. It's a dicey thing to do. Software is much easier to make money on than hardware. So they would love to probably sit with these new consoles for as long as possible. But let's say there is the Xbox One Zero or something like that. Were that to come, then probably the Xbox One S will sort of fade out. Just the same way we start to see, you know, stuff at the low end kind of quietly doesn't really work with the new software. That's a tough thing for them to say right now, but I think if they could at least say, hey, we're not going to do a hard reset that's going to, you know, pretty much make your current technology and current spend obsolete, that would do, I think, a lot. I think, unfortunately, the core can they just get so upset with any form of change. I've always said that, like, core gamers are really like, say, an 85-year-old grandma on Medicare who's suddenly seeing her plan shift. It's like that level of fear. But I think some clearer messaging about what the business model is turning into, I think would do a lot to assuage those fears and get people to feel more comfortable dropping, you know, another $400, $500.
Matt, do you ever see that happening? Do you ever see Sony or Microsoft saying, hey, with PS5 or Xbox 2 or whatever the hell it's called, it will play these games that are coming out for Xbox One X or PS4 Pro?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's we've talked about how it's kind of going to the cell phone.
Yeah, that's what his sort of argument was.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone who pays attention to the industry is thinking the same thing. Like the PS5 is still going to play PS4 Pro games. The PS4 Pro is still going to probably be able to play PS5 games, just less, you know, just like the same thing. You're just going to move the bracket up.
But I guess my point was, do you think they're going to say that? Because wouldn't that kind of discourage people from buying Xbox One X and PS4 Pro?
I mean, I don't think it would be in the commercials.
Right.
You know, but I'm sure they'd say something at like the E3 press conference.
It's a catch-22, right? Because
Right.
Adam brought that idea up to answer my question of, are people not going to want to upgrade because they're waiting for the PS5 or the Xbox 2? But you can also look at it the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to make it the desirable new thing, and I don't think they've hit that yet. Either PlayStation 4 Pro or Xbox One X. I don't think they're at the point where like we're about to probably see a new iPhone. The iPhone 8 is probably going to pop up, and that is going to have some features and some things that the iPhone 7 and 6 can't do, and they're going to try to tempt you into upgrading to this rumored $1,000 phone.
Yeah.
And like, what's that going to be? What's that going to be to compel people to like, I need that to be my new phone? Like, there's nothing quite there in the Xbox One X, the PS4 Pro, that I think appeals to anyone beyond people like us who just are obsessed with getting the best performance and experience out of an individual game. I think the mainstream audience will look at the difference and kind of be like, I can live with this in exchange for keeping $500 in my wallet, So whatever that is that makes the PS5 the PS5, it better be damn good.
Doesn't the messaging get murky, though, too?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but in this, I think Adam's right in that you just have to create this comfort zone where you don't feel like you're abandoning this library and this system that you've invested all this time and money into. And even though
we've been doing that our entire lives.
Yeah, but I mean, look at what Xbox One's doing with all this backwards compatibility, and the 60 gigabyte PlayStation 3 that is natively hardware backwards compatible to the PlayStation 2 still goes for $400 or $500 on eBay. I mean, there is an audience that cares about that, and that audience tends to be the early adopters, and if the early adopters don't accept your product, you're going to run into trouble, which Microsoft learned this time around.
For sure. Yep. Well, let's hear what Marcus had to say about Xbox One X.
Well, the Xbox One that I got sent at launch back in the days when I was somebody in this industry and had a
You'll
a TV
always be
segment.
someone in this industry.
I'm like something. When I had the NBC segment, I got the launch PS4, which is ticking along nicely, thank you. And I got a launch Xbox One, and it turns out that Xbox Ones do not like cats vomiting into their fans. Our oldest cat, CJ, who is 19, she's obviously a Sony fan cat. It was the Xbox One was in our living room before I redid The Office, because we were using it as a DVD player and everything else. And I heard her retching, and I went to see, and she was sitting on top of the Xbox One because it's nice and warm, and she threw up all the way into it, and I just, because it was in low power mode, and I just heard her.
That's it.
Okay. That's done, and I didn't. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I had more PS4 games than I had Xbox One games, and when I saw what they were doing with Scorpio, that to me it'll be the next individual iteration. I mean, it's like nowadays where you get an iPhone 5 or an iPhone 6 or a Galaxy 7 or a Galaxy 9. I mean, you just jump in between. So this one, this hopefully will last me a little while. Crackdown. I want my Crackdown next year. I know I've got with the PS4, it's not a Pro, it's a PS4, and it's the PSVR, and that's taken care of on that side. And now, the next one's a little step up as well, and I want those Microsoft games back in my life. I can still play them on the PC, thankfully, with Windows 10, but there's something to be said about, the console stretching out on the couch, having it on the big jumbo TV. So yeah, that's why I did it. They just need to get their asses in gear and get that frigging Crackdown game out.
Doesn't seem like Marcus had much of a reason for buying Xbox One X,
well,
other than his cat puking in his old Xbox.
That's a fine reason.
It is, yes.
It's a fine reason to get anything, really, if your cat puked on the previous one.
Yeah.
You would hope they don't puke on something so expensive. But,
right.
I mean, I'll buy that, sure. I don't have one pre-ordered.
I don't either.
I'm going to basically wait and see on this one. Like, if it comes back with, like, reports that, like, oh, wow, like, backwards compatibility 360 games are amazing on this, it makes them look better, it makes them run better, like, I might think about it, because I like my 360 library a lot more than I like my Xbox One library.
For sure. I mean, I think the only thing that would tip the scales for me is, and I know they will never do this because it goes against everything Microsoft is trying to do right now, but I think the only thing that would tip the scales for me is if they said, hey, here are these awesome games you can only play on Xbox One X. I mean,
they got Crackdown. I feel like that's not going to work on you, though.
I mean, I hate to say it, but you know, kind of the whole idea now is there's no such thing as backwards compatibility. It's just all compatible now. And to me, that's keeping me from buying.
Yeah, well, sadly,
console.
I think like one of the things I'm most interested in on the Xbox One X, and like I don't think it's exclusive to Xbox One X. I think it'll be on the normal one too. Is the original Xbox? Like, I like to play Jet Set Radio Future again. Like, but it's like one of the things that has me most interested in your current console is that I can play a 16-year-old game on it again.
Yeah.
And that seems...
That's sad.
Like a problem.
It's a big-time problem.
It's not something anyone's going to spend $500 on, but I might turn my existing one on again to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically saying, Microsoft, I know you're bribing me, but go ahead and bribe me, and then I'll buy your new console. Because that's what it is. When you're taking games and saying, you need to invest X amount of dollars in this hardware to play this piece of software, it's essentially a bribe. But I'm okay with I mean, that's what would get me to ultimately spend the money on Scorpio, because my entire library is on PS4 from this era. And
Same.
I mean, I have, you know, it's kind of flip-flopped. Now the only games I have for Xbox One are the exclusives for Microsoft, which transitions nicely into the next question, which is, what the hell is going on at Microsoft Game Studios? What's up with the exclusives
or lack thereof?
Or lack thereof from Microsoft? Let's hear from Adam.
I mean, it's tough. You know, it's not like I don't like the games that are Xbox exclusives. I'm fine with Gears. I'm fine with Halo. But they're kind of games that are in the same vernacular, just these straight action games. Whereas you do look at stuff that Sony has, especially like Horizon Zero Dawn, which just... that game rubbed my belly in ways I can't. It's so good.
Yeah.
That I think, and once again, this kind of goes back to that sense of being a lost leader. Is I think I think a lot of people were skeptical if Horizon was going to find an audience. It did, but at the same time, even if it didn't, it gives Sony really good definition as to what the brand means, and that's where I think Microsoft is sort of struggling. It's like core shooters and Forza. That's a fairly narrow lane of appeal. It's young men or slightly older men as well.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't generate, I think, the same level of excitement when you kind of look at, you know, all the chances that somebody's going to take it, good or ill. I mean, they have David Cage. Say what you will about David Cage. There is, you know, you don't see Microsoft or even Nintendo willing to invest on something that's kind of that niche or that oddball and something like that creates that much controversy.
Do you think it's more than just a stylistic issue, though, or a quality issue? Isn't it really just quantity for Microsoft? I mean, isn't that really the core issue for Microsoft right now?
I mean, I think so. I mean, the problem is they had a piece of hardware that was $100 more than another one, you know, when both launched. And I think I think, Shane, you once articulated this perfectly, is, you know, back when Call of Duty was at its height, it was so important to hardware sales because the first guy in a group of friends that played Call of Duty, whatever he bought, that was going to dictate what everyone else bought. And it tends to be this kind of exponential growth. And I think we're seeing that once again with Microsoft and Sony. Is it came in cheaper. For Europe, it was FIFA. You know, I don't. Would you say that Call of Duty was still the big thing when the PS4 launched?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then once again, it just, you know, it was cheaper, so one guy in the group chose to get it, and it just kind of blossomed like that. Obviously, as I've said, like the Xbox One X isn't going to be the hard reset, but there could be that kind of that gravity. The one thing I would say about the necessity of exclusives is for people like you and me, it's very, very important. For that much broader consumer, once again, kind of the Call of Duty, the Grand Theft Auto, Madden, and maybe one or two other games in the course of a year, they may not even realize that, you know, this isn't exclusive only to this system. They're just getting the games that are available. I think, you know, when it really comes down to what's going to move the hardware for the mass audience, it really is sort of price and what my friends are playing.
Yeah. And then you start thinking about, you know, kind of circling back around to Call of Duty. It's kind of been a big deal over the last decade or so. Who got the DLC for Call of Duty first? In last generation, Microsoft got it first on 360. Now that deal has swung over to Sony. Sony's getting that DLC first. And this is also to your point about how multi-platform games tend to matter more to the average consumer than they do to the core guys like us. With these iterative consoles, what kind of opportunity does Microsoft really have to start getting those exclusive deals back on its side, though?
I mean, it's money. That's what I think.
Yeah.
It's like no one's ever cutting these deals out of beneficence or some sort of interest. You know, they see the money, they see the opportunity. Obviously, if they see the larger install base, that means that DLC is going to be, you know, more remunerative for them. I think, you know, a mixture of money and maybe the Xbox One X, once again, does tend to just bring in that many more. I mean, I think that's really the only way. I think it was, remember Jeff Brown over at EA?
Yeah.
Yeah, I once asked him, I think it was when Crysis 3 was coming out, and there was that very short period of time when there were 3D games in the wake of Avatar.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, I pulled him aside, this was on the record, and I was like, you know, are you, you know, what's the thinking with this? I mean, are you guys really making a big foray into 3D? And he's like, no, we're only gonna do a 3D game if there's money attached. And there was obviously money from a TV manufacturer, you know, because the TV industry was trying to figure out how to sell more TVs because everyone had their, you know, their plasma 1080p. That once again, almost all of this is driven by economics, not necessarily cynical economics, but they're never going to do something out of, well, good intentions without money attached.
Do you believe that, Matt?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No question whatsoever.
It's always all about money.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, it's what you think all this HDR stuff is about.
Yeah.
You know, it's I mean, it does make it look better, but it's also kind of a cheat, you know? And the thing is, like...
Do you agree with Adam that the average consumer doesn't really know much about exclusives?
Yes.
Really?
Judging by the people I know who are gamers but not, like, follow the industry kind of gamers, like, I'm constantly saying, oh, I played this Bloodborne thing. I want to get it, but I can't find it. I'm like, well, you don't own a PS4, and like they don't.
No, game like Bloodborne, I get it. There are core gamers who probably don't realize Bloodborne was a PS4 exclusive, but I'm talking about stuff like Halo, Gears of War, Forza. I think most people that at least play games moderately know.
Most people know Halo is Xbox.
Can only get those on Xbox.
Halo, I think Gears of War is a very forgotten series at this point. And Forza, I think Forza is just known kind of as Xbox car game. Like a lot of people don't know its name, but they're just like, oh, I have a racing game on Xbox. I guess it's that. You know, it's like there's no brand loyalty to Forza. It seems outside of car fanatics. Like, but people just want to play a driving game. If they have an Xbox, they get Forza. If they have a PlayStation, they get Gran Turismo eventually one day if they ever release one. It doesn't seem to move hardware in the same way that, like, that's the question. Is like, so clearly PS4 won in the hardware motion, and it's tempting, as Adam said before, it's tempting to say it was $100 cheaper.
Yeah,
that's all it was. Like, if you didn't force that stupid Kinect in there and you charge $100 less. You know, and there's a lot of talk that, like, from industry people who were there or involved in those early, like Sony was ready to lowball I think Pachter said that too. Like, Sony was ready to take a loss on the PlayStation 4 to undercut Microsoft's price point, but then Microsoft came out and was like $500, and they're like, oh, okay,
we don't have to.
They don't have to do that. So I think the thing that really damaged Microsoft the most in the short term at launch was the fact that they thought the Kinect was still a thing.
Yeah.
And they packaged a $100 Kinect in there, and you didn't have a choice, really.
Adam hit the nail on the head, though. It's because it was $100 more.
Yeah.
If they had just taken the loss on $100, like, that's a case where hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah.
But this is a case where you can see where if Microsoft had just priced exactly at the PS4's price, I don't know if it would have won this generation.
But it wouldn't have been the massacre it turned out to be.
It wouldn't have been 2-1,
yeah.
which is basically where we're sitting right now.
Yeah, and I think, I remember at the time, even that day of the press conferences, a bunch of us would walk out of each one of those press conferences, especially at the end of the day after Sony did their mic drop on the DRM thing.
Yeah.
I remember everyone just saying, like, Microsoft fell for the same hubris that Sony did the previous. Sony thought they were invincible going into the PS3, and they blew it. And Microsoft took tremendous advantage of it. And then Microsoft did the same damn thing. Like, they thought they were bulletproof, and they weren't. No one's ever bulletproof in this industry. Not on a hardware level. Like people will go to the best deal and the games they want every time.
Yeah.
And I also don't think it helps that the Halo games this generation have been underwhelming.
Doesn't help.
It's not a thing that pulls you over there. Meanwhile, you're seeing, I think, on Twitter and a lot of social media, you're seeing the hype and the furor around Destiny 2 because it feels like Halo, old Halo.
Right.
It feels like Bungie's back.
Yeah.
And like people are freaking out about how great that is, and no one cares what it's on except what their friends are playing it on.
But this goes back to what you were saying about how the average consumer doesn't know games as well as we do. They do, though. They know that Bungie made Halo, and they know Bungie's making Destiny, and they're like, oh, Bungie's back in form, and now Destiny 2 is awesome. So I think
that all comes from Halo, the Halo being one of the biggest games in history.
Yeah, you're right. But I still think Adam is maybe selling the average consumer a little short. I think they know...
But I think he's not wrong for the most part when it comes to anything less than the 800-pound gorillas in the game title industry. Yeah. I think... the sheer number of people who own PlayStation 4s and have for years that I've had to tell them about Horizon, even in the last month.
Even though it's like Forza Horizon 20 at this point.
No, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Like, they don't know what this is. It's sold very well. It's a big exclusive. It's on the front of PSN on a regular basis.
It's a new IP.
Yeah, but like they don't know it exists. And it's not that like, oh, I didn't know what that was. I didn't want to try it. I didn't want to pay $60. They're like, why? What is it? Like they had no idea it existed.
Yeah.
So I've told them to get it. And every single time I tell someone to get it, they come back like, oh, thanks for telling me to play that because it was amazing. But it's just like, I guess it's kind of like movies where you pay attention to the stuff you know, and it's hard to kind of find the stuff you don't know if you're not really digging into those sites every day, if you're not looking at SIFTD every day.
Yeah, that's where marketing comes in.
Yeah.
That's where Sony and Microsoft spending their money wisely, advertising in the right places at the right time.
But I think the problem comes from exactly what Adam said about the narrow lane that Microsoft is driving, where you can market Halo and Gears of War and Forza as much as you want, but there's still a segment of the audience you're going to reach and a segment of the audience you're never going to reach. And you're not going to be able to expand when all you have are 2 shooters and a driving game.
Yep.
And I mean, not to be cynical, but I don't think Sea of Thieves is going to help that equation much.
You want to talk about a game that the casual doesn't know about?
Man, I don't even know. I still don't quite know what the hell that. I mean,
but they don't even know it exists. So
right, but it's like you see, there's 5,000 developer diaries, and I'm still kind of looking at it like, I don't know. I don't know
what
if
do
I want
to.
It looks fun, but I don't. And and then of course you run into the problem of the fact that I can play all these games on my PC, and they look. I played a little bit of ReCore, the definitive edition, and damn, that looks better on the PC than it does on the Xbox One. And it's like when it comes down to it, it's like, oh, don't you want to play that on your stretch out on your couch and do that? It's like, yeah, but like I can also just Steam box it to my my TV, and it looks better because it's a 4K TV. If you have a 4K TV with running in 4K, because that's the other thing about those Xbox One games on Windows 10, they all run like demons. Like they optimize them real well. Like Forza has everything maxed and looks gorgeous and never stutters ever once. Meanwhile, I can't run Mafia 3 at like 1080p on that thing because the shaders are weird. So like, Microsoft's almost shooting them in the foot with me. My case in particular is like, they're not giving me any reason to stop playing my PC and play these games on Xbox. I don't think they care.
I don't think they want.
I don't think they're after that.
I think they're fine with you playing games on Windows 10. Also, talking about Sea of Thieves, that kind of goes back to the earlier discussion about asymmetrical games and how your fun is kind of reliant upon other players.
That is a lot of my skepticism of that game. Is like, I don't know.
That is really cooperative.
Yeah, like if people you're playing with don't know what you're doing, like, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, you're all going to die.
Yeah, well, people are going to board your ship and take all your stuff.
And, like, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I would have been super into that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have the peeps to dedicate to that now.
Yeah, I mean, my friends list it's still pretty good on both consoles.
I have a lot of people on Xbox all the time. Every time I load up the Xbox One, even recently, I've got 10, 15 people, but they're all watching TV and Netflix.
It's hard. It's also just hard to get people to say, yeah, I want to play that game right now at the same time.
Yeah. Or every Tuesday at 8 p.m.
Forget it.
Yeah.
As you get older, people have kids and responsibilities and stuff like that. So,
and I don't even feel like I hate committing to like groups about that too, because like sometimes like I don't feel like playing that tonight.
No, you're right.
And then it's a job, and then I don't like it. Then I resent it, and then I don't want to play. And then I don't like everybody I'm playing with, and then it becomes a whole thing. And that's why I play single-player games.
Yeah. Well, we know Marcus really doesn't like anything. I mean, it's true. I mean, remember, he hates Nintendo, for sure. And generally...
He hates Nintendo so much as he just is sick of their bullshit.
That
which,
could be.
I'm right there with him.
Yeah,
so.
He doesn't seem to like their games very much. But what does he have to say about Microsoft's exclusives?
I think Microsoft has sat on their laurels for a long time. They had the lead with Xbox 360, and we all discussed this. That 360 came out the gate and killed PS3 at the beginning, but Sony learned from it, and that's why they dominated with the start of PS4. Everything they did was the right move, and they locked down the exclusives, and they didn't overpromise and underdeliver. Whereas Microsoft, we know they had the stigma of Kinect. They had the stigma of wanting to be this one hub box, which is not why somebody's going to buy a $500 console. And we've said this before in numerous shows, both on game trailers and on every friggin' network going. Microsoft, I think, are learning. I thought their E3 press conference was pretty strong. I think everybody had a strong E3 press conference. I think this year is going to be good. But yeah, I think that they just had to pull their fingers out, and the fact that they've stopped making the Xbox One, they confirmed that this week, didn't they? That they just made the very last Xbox One, which is fine.
Well, actually, they confirmed that they had stopped making the original Xbox when the Xbox One S launched. Yesterday, they announced that.
Okay,
so they've actually stopped producing it months and months ago, and nobody knew.
Well, again, no. I mean, there's no need to make those older versions. I mean, if only they can just turn back time now and drop Kinect down a toilet. Yeah. Because that's I'm looking forward to having a console that doesn't need frigging Kinect. I mean, ironically, Sony have come through with something that you need a camera for.
Yeah.
In the VR. So if Kinect worked with a VR thing, it would become totally viable.
Marcus is over the moon over VR.
Yeah.
We asked him a question there about Microsoft exclusives, and he was still focused on hardware.
Mm-hmm. Well, because there's not much else to talk about.
There isn't,
unless you want to get into
the
things they've canceled.
Yeah.
I think while I don't think it would move tons of systems, I think having Scalebound and some form of Fable there, be it Fable Legends or something they could salvage that game into.
Yeah.
Another asymmetrical multiplayer thing.
No, you're right. Yeah.
I feel like that would at least make the exclusive lineup feel a little more textured, even if I wasn't ready to jump on Fable Legends or whatever, but or if Scalebound was mediocre, but it would feel less like the system was aiming at your standard Xbox fanboy who doesn't care that it's the same thing over and over again. Because I actually enjoyed going through some old Gears of War games and playing them for some capture I had to do recently. But that doesn't mean I want to play more and more and more. And I didn't go back to Gears 4. Gears 4 didn't really grab me.
You never finished Gears 4?
No.
Wow.
It's just the same thing I'd already done, and not
new
as
weapons and a couple of new tweaks here and there.
It just didn't. I have finished all the Halo games. I guess because maybe they're shorter, or maybe they don't feel as long because you can sort of beeline them a little bit. I don't know. They just don't excite me. They don't. I don't trust them. And I think Destiny 2 hasn't helped them in that regard, because playing Destiny 2 the last day or so reminds me of how much I enjoyed those old Halo games and how they really kind of had a rhythm and an organic feeling to them that they've lost.
Yeah.
And it's just not there anymore. And what Sony's doing is more interesting to me now.
Yeah, I think with both those franchises moving to new developers, Gears and Halo, it's like they took a picture of the old games and then tried to paint the picture.
Yeah.
But they didn't, you can't get the heart and the soul of the games that way. And I think that's what's been missing from both those franchises.
Yeah. I'd say more Halo than Gears. I mean, Gears it feels pretty close. I just feel like that's my problem more than anything else. But Halo, I feel like it's missing. Like you said, I think it's missing its soul. You said, it's just whatever made those previous Halo games special, whatever made all the way up to Reach,
Well, it's like they
It's
went
not
back
there.
and they played an old Halo game, and then they made a list, and they said it has this, and it has this, and it has this. And then they created the new one, and they're like, it's got that, it's got that, it's got that. Lacking the intangibles, though, is the problem.
Because I'd be pretty excited for, maybe if Halo, again, I think they missed the boat by not showing Halo 6. Maybe Halo 6 is 2 years out, and it doesn't matter. But if you had me looking at, like, this is what Halo 6 looks on this thing, and it looks amazing, and it looks like you got the mojo back, I'd be way more inclined. I mean, obviously you wouldn't need to buy one at launch. But at least I'd be thinking about it down the line, and right now it's not in the equation.
That's the big problem, though. You can never tell if the mojo is there until you play it. Like, even just playing a 15, 20-minute demo at E3 or wherever, that's still not really enough.
Well, and even like with Halo 5, it didn't even matter because the promos they ran had nothing to do with the game.
Yeah, you're right.
The whole the Locke versus Master Chief thing, like that wasn't a thing.
It really
in the game.
wasn't.
Like none of that happened.
It kind of was. I mean, there was a little rivalry.
Locke was chasing him. There was that one scene,
right?
But like
they made it seem like the whole game was about that. Yeah.
And it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And there was nothing else there. Was the problem? It was just the same story about maybe Cortana's crazy now. That's been there. That's been hinted at since 3.
Yeah.
It's just like get on with it.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? What is this? Game of Thrones? Like move on. Like that's the problem. Is Halo is in their season 4 of Game of Thrones right now, and they got to move past the books and just go crazy.
No, you're
in
right.
Halo 6.
That's a good analogy. I like that. Obviously, anytime you get the chance to talk to a couple people like Marcus and Adam, who have been in the industry for, I think Marcus has been in the industry longer than I have, because he did PR for a long time and did a bunch of other stuff in Europe before he ever came over to the States. Adam's been in it for almost 2 decades. I think when you talk to people that have that kind of experience and that breadth of experience, you want to know what they think the next big thing is, what the next frontier is. And I think this is one of the most important questions I ask these guys. What is next? What is the next frontier? Is VR the next frontier? Let's hear from Marcus.
I think it is when it gets cheaper. I think VR is not going to go away. We've seen some experiments, Google Glass, HoloLens. We know that we are years away from having a full projection room. Like Microsoft and a couple of others have been going on about. I think on the tech side, that's where we will go because the PCs are getting more powerful. And, when people start getting the PCs, and now that the consoles are basically glorified PCs anyway, I still think that is the long-term goal for the industry for immersion because you can't beat it when it can take a tired platform genre and invigorate it just from this just different angle.
Yeah.
What could it do for, No Man's Sky, for Fallout, for, the Batman game was kind of limited, but still really, really fun because it's that novelty. And when people start taking advantage of it and actually evolving beyond the novelty and putting that framework together with multiplayer like they do with the Star Trek Bridge Commander game, that sort of level of fun is just great. That's where I would like to see the industry go on the tech side.
Where do you think it's really going, though?
I think we're going to be stuck in a League of Legends, Dota, Overwatch hell.
Do you agree with him?
I guess he's not a fan of Overwatch.
No.
I mean, he's probably not wrong in that we're going to be treading water, and whether you think this is a good thing or not, I guess depends how much you like character shooters and MOBAs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're starting to slowly see the VR developers put the pieces together and take these steps towards real games as opposed to sort of demo.
Still
stuff.
No killer app, though.
No killer app, but like...
we should have had a killer app by now.
Oh, I don't know about that. Like
Really?
It's a new medium.
Look.
The medium's like a year and a half old.
Look at 3D gaming. There was a killer app, boom, right out of the gate.
Yeah, well, motion control gaming.
There was Wii Sports, absolutely. Killer app right out of the gate.
I hate that game, though. So
everybody else loves it. This is where you're different from everybody else.
No, I think a lot of hardcore gamers don't have a lot of use for Wii Sports, but it was just a big hit.
I loved Wii Sports.
But,
I had a blast with it.
I mean, it was neat, but like I didn't need to play it for years, and I'm certainly never going to go back and play it again. Whereas I would play a level of Super Mario 64 right now.
Yeah.
There's a difference there. And the closest a killer app for VR, I don't even know what that would be, because there's so many varied experiences you could have. And the thing that, I mean, maybe some people would say one of Bethesda's things, but I don't think that's true. I don't think Fallout 4 is what's going to do it. I don't think Doom is what's going to do it. I think Doom is mostly going to make people sick.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll tell you what might have a good shot. And I'm biased in terms of the Star Wars stuff, but also because Star Wars is a very, very popular goddamn thing. You make X-Wing again in that perspective, especially if Ace Combat 7 gets any tread on it. The cockpit stuff works real well. I mean, even American Truck Simulator works well in VR. I mean, and that's boring.
Yeah.
But it's not boring, isn't it? It's weird. That's basically what I think is like, whatever that killer app is, you can't predict what's going to capture the imagination of the mainstream public, which is finally going to make them say like, oh, I got to spend money to do this. But I could see flying an X-Wing being it. Yeah. But EA's never going to try that.
I think it's going to be something really simple.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Wii Sports. It was a very simple game. It's going to have to be something that the average person can look at and be like, that's awesome.
Well, it's like Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like Pokemon is not a complex idea.
It's really not.
It's just, but it just works. It makes sense and it fits the platform. And earlier than that, there's a game that most people don't remember that sold a lot of Game Boys with Connect. When they started doing the Connect cables on the original Game Boy, it was called Faceball 2000. And it was a multiplayer, like you were in a maze, first person, and everybody was a smiley face. And you shot little bullets at each other through this maze, and running around shooting it. And you hooked up the Game Boys like a 4-way connector thing, and you played 4-player multiplayer like that. And it was huge, and all the magazines wrote about it, and this is amazing. And I remember people buying like the connectors and stuff like that. And after a year, no one ever thought of it ever again.
Yeah.
But it was that
big
thing.
Barrier entry
but it was
there
that thing but it was that thing that made you think, oh, look what this can do.
Yeah.
And then later on, the real use of the Game Boy connector cable was Pokemon.
Yep.
But that was the thing that kind of had the promise. And I think we're seeing a lot of Faceball 2000s right now.
Yeah.
Games that are like, oh, you play it and you're like, oh, this is cool, this works. I want to be able to do this. But in 10 years, is anyone going to remember it? Probably not.
I mean, that's already happening with me with VR. I mean, there are games when I play them the first time, they blow me away. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And then I never play them again unless somebody comes over and I'm showing them VR.
Yeah, that happens, but there's things that I think stick with me, like I Expect You to Die, I think is really, really clever, especially in the way that there's like 7 or 8 different ways to do every single level in that game, and sometimes you do them by accident, and you're like, oh, that, okay, really cool. And like that's kind of that sort of revelatory moment, which I think is really good, that VR excels at, where you suddenly figure out you can do something you didn't think you could do. Which even goes all the way back to the Steam VR tutorial where they are having you like blow up balloons out of the controllers, and then you realize you can tap the balloons.
Right.
And like it just all of a sudden it changes everything. And so VR is all about that kind of a moment. But I think the most effective use of it, if you want to get a mainstream person in, at least in my experience showing it to people, is I tell you, once you put someone in that Star Wars Battlefront VR thing they did for Rogue One, where you fly the X-Wing around, like people are living a dream when that happened. Like, and it's like the only reason that exists is because Lucasfilm threw marketing money at them and had them make it. EA is never going to make that on their own, and that's a shame because that's what we're basically waiting for. And I don't think it's a coincidence. Also, remember I mentioned that lightsaber training thing. Like they had to make that themselves because EA won't do VR stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like.
EA's been smart, though.
I mean, I think
because
EA's
no one's
wise
made
to
money
not.
on VR.
Yeah, EA's wise not to risk in terms of being again
fiscally
responsible, especially to their shareholders. I think they made the right call.
Yeah.
As Adam said, everything comes back to economics. But in terms of like the thing that's going to take VR to the next level, that's going to make people say, "Ooh, I need that." Like that could come in a familiar IP, and there's no.
They're holding the keys to it.
They're holding the Star Wars license, and that's what it's going to take. Because Star Trek didn't do it.
Yeah.
Star Trek could have done it. I think Bridge Crew is as good as Star Trek games you're going to get. I mean, obviously you could make bigger and better and da-da-da, but that is brilliant.
It is.
And
yeah.
no one cares.
But again, very simple idea though.
Yeah, very simple to play.
Yeah.
But as long as everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
But like, and you can still play. I mean, there are still people playing regularly. It's not like it's hard to find a game. But I don't think they sold 1 million copies of that.
No way. Not even close.
You know, it's not there. You need something that engages you immediately and makes you think, oh, okay, I get it, and goes. But if
I never saw any marketing for that game either.
No, not really. I mean, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Your install base isn't,
but at what
isn't big
point
enough.
does a publisher decide it is worth it, though? Because I think it's a
Yeah.
chicken or egg scenario.
Well,
where
I
they're
think-
like, well, the install base isn't big enough to market our games for it, but
Right.
but it's never going to get big enough.
Well,
if they
I think
don't market.
you're running into the problem that like the reason like consoles and new hardware gets pushed properly is because the people making them need them to sell.
Yeah.
Like there's and those Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo all develop games for that, and there isn't really any equivalent of that in the VR headset stuff except for Sony, and they're getting there, but they're not quite there, and they don't have the IP that would make people universally flock there. I don't think. Meanwhile, like who's going to make an exclusive for Vive and why? I mean,
Nobody.
no. And now you can see kind of Valve sort of distancing themselves from HTC in that little bit, and it's like because look, you want to get those things into people's homes. Half-Life 3 exclusive to VR.
Well, look, HTC is starting to distance itself from Vive.
Yeah.
It's talking about selling it, and now Palmer Lucky's jumping. Who knows? Let's hear from Adam.
The dust is going to have to settle, basically. And I don't know where it's going to settle or what's going to make it settle, but I think you are right in that we haven't seen the killer app, but we haven't seen the game that's going to focus VR on what it needs to be yet.
Yeah.
Everybody's just trying everything, and someday something's going to stick to the wall, but I don't have an idea what that'll be.
If you do have that idea, you'll be very well.
Yeah, I'm not going to be here. I got to go do that.
So you actually haven't seen these interviews that I've done
No.
with Marcus and Adam. Do you think Adam is going to say VR is the next frontier?
Yes.
Yes?
I think he'll. I don't think he'll dismiss it.
Okay. Let's hear from him, Sam.
I think it's gonna be a while before VR becomes the next frontier. I agree with Shu Yoshida. I see VR as an entirely different medium, and that while games are played on VR, VR is almost like a phone. I can play games on my phone, but my phone has a multitude of different uses, and I'm buying my phone primarily not for the games. I'm using it as a communication and information device. I think where the future is the games as platforms. I think the wild, crazy success of Battlegrounds really speaks to that a game could be this insanely popular as an early access game. And that, the economic model of getting someone, also Overwatch, just massively, wildly successful, and that you get people playing the game, then you just kind of either sell or add in more content and you keep them engaged over time. The numbers on something like that are a lot better than, throwing a bunch of money to just create number 5 of another franchise. I think that's where it's going, and it looks like finally the player base is very receptive to something like that. Just like they used to kind of congregate fanatically around a console, we're starting to see people fanatically congregate more around sort of a brand franchise like I've never seen before.
Do you think that's overall good for the industry? Because if people are playing the same game for 2 and 3 years, we're seeing Grand Theft Auto 5 continue to be in the top 10 sales every month, years after its release. Do you think it's good for the industry, and do you think that that's something that will propagate innovation? Because obviously when there's less of the pie out there, the risk becomes bigger to try out new ideas and launch new IP. Do you think that these games as a service could create sort of this chasm between the haves and the have-nots?
There is a risk there. I think what it does mean is we might see even fewer major game releases in the course of a year. But what I do think is, rather than having to play it so conservatively by having a new sequel every 2 years that felt barely distinguishable from the game, from the version of the game you just played, it now has, here you now have revenue coming in on a game for a couple of years that can slow down the development and allow for more innovation in either the sequel to that game or some other title out there. I think there's just as much a chance for something positive to come out of this as there is for something negative. Because obviously a company that's doing very well with a game could just sit there and rest on their laurels and just kind of generate revenue off of that one game they have.
And you don't think that that will affect the output in general? Because one thing that's kind of been happening is game sales are going down. So if you look at GameStop's numbers, brick and mortar numbers, game sales are going down, but revenue at the publishers continues to go up, which means that the people who are, or the businesses who are making the money off these games as a service are the publishers and not retail.
Well, there's also that one thing in the middle too, which is I think it's clear that digital sales are going right through the roof.
Yeah,
I know
because that's the microtransaction. That's the outfits and the skins and
yeah, but there's that other revenue. It's one of those once again it's a double-edged sword. I mean, most game publishers are publicly traded companies,
right?
And the more that they can show the revenue coming in, the happier their investors are going to be. And the happier their investors are going to be, the more they're not going to care what the publisher is going to do next.
Right.
If you see what I mean. So they have to appease them, but once they're appeased, they might be able to have the opportunity to innovate. At some point, the market is going to want something new and something different. And it's really sort of up to the publishers to have kind of to be able to see into the future somewhat and to be able to invest in something that might actually find that market. So I mean, that's what I think is always the toughest thing about games is you're working on something usually 4 years before anyone's going to play it, and you're trying to guess what people want to play 4 years from now.
Right.
And we've seen more. I mean, if you look at the MMO craze, once MMOs finally were published, people had really started to move on from the genre of the MMO. I mean, that's the stuff that always worries me.
So, what do you think about Adam's take on games as a service?
I mean, he would know more about it than I would.
I mean, keep in mind, Adam has been kind of consulting over...
Yeah, he's gone very biz dev, and he knows a lot more about that than we do, and probably knows a lot more than he can say.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's right in that regard.
But he did bring up a great point that the average consumer, or even the core gamer, probably doesn't even think about is that, yeah, it takes 2 years to make most games, but there's so much more that goes into that game before they start developing it. So he's right. It's like you're trying to predict the future 4 years in advance.
Right, and then you get things like where you're asking about, like, well, how come no one's stolen PUBG's ideas?
Right.
And it's like, because it takes a while to get all that stuff off the ground. Like it's, and who knows when they started working on that? Because that's an Arma mod.
Yeah.
So like now that's the new hotness. But if you're like gonna, let's say you're Activision and you're like, oh, we should put a mode like that in Call of Duty. So what's the first Call of Duty you could get that in? Next year's? The year after?
Yeah.
Is anyone going to care by then?
I mean, truth be told, they probably could release DLC for World War II.
But presuming that the engine would support that.
Right.
Like you never know. Like that, something takes place in a big open area like that. You don't know if you.
Well, it is Call of Duty.
I mean, it is scalable.
I think likely Battlefield is the
Battlefield
franchise.
seems like a place to do that.
Yeah.
But like you said before, you can scale it. If you play that mode with 50 people, is it really all that different? No.
Yeah, you just shrink the size of the battlefield.
Make it smaller to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think that lag time is always going to be there, and probably the worst that ever was where Adam mentions MMOs in the wake of World of Warcraft, and everybody tried to make their own MMO, which was just like never go up against Blizzard. Never start a land war against Blizzard. That's the classic blunder. Everybody. It takes so long to make that kind of game. That's even more true there, where it's like 4 years later, it's like here we got a game that kind of plays like WoW vanilla, and no one cared, and you lost a lot of developers to that.
I think maybe one thing Adam left out is the importance of characters and creating characters that resonate with the player. And on this week's Pactor Factor, he kind of he slipped up a little bit and said that Lawbreakers was a success, when we all know, so at least so far it's not. But I think at this point,
it's not the success it needs to be.
Right. Yeah, and I think at this point we can all agree that it wasn't the gameplay that doomed that game.
No.
It's a character-based shooter without any character. And I think that's really what's held it back, and the fact that it's being compared to these other games that have tremendous amount of character. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Bungie and the Halo games, how you can't tell someone how to put soul into a video game. It's either there or it's not. It's this intangible thing that I think comes from love of doing the job as a developer. I'm sure the development environment plays into a big part of that. How close is the team? How good are the team leaders? I think all that plays into it. And that's something that you can't just snap your fingers and create. So I think that's what a lot of people miss with games as a service and the most successful ones. Even like, we were seeing some footage of Rainbow Six Siege there. So those were just military guys in fatigues and bulletproof vests. But did you notice that each one of those characters had character? Like, they aren't just generic military guy. And I think that's where you're seeing games like Call of Duty and Battlefield 1 kind of getting left behind a little bit. Just because you're a traditional military game doesn't mean that you can't have characters that resonate with people. Call of Duty proved that itself with the first Modern Warfare. So I think that's kind of the differentiator with games as a service. Can you create characters that people care about? Look at the most successful ones: League of Legends, Overwatch. Those are the games that have done really well. And if you think about it, those are also the games that have the most compelling and most memorable characters. So I love the angle that Adam took there, because that's where the space that he's living in now. He's more kind of on the business side of things, as you said, biz dev. So I think that's why we have them on here, because everyone here is kind of providing a different perspective on this. I think I knew what Marcus was going to say about games as a service before I even did the interview, but let's hear from him anyway.
I think, well, it's going to be games that are just fast food gaming. It's going to be fast food gaming where the diet's not really going to help you. We're going to end up, unfortunately, the games that we used to play where there were 60, 70, 80 hours of single player. They've been going over and over, and we've seen this, with Call of Duty over the years. That stuff's been refined down, and now they put the big set piece moments into multiplayer battlefields, which are great to look at and a sense of achievement when you're playing it. I still want to be playing the same map over and over again, or the same 6 maps. I kind of grew out of that in the late 90s after playing Doom and Heretic and Rainbow Six, and you want the new content, but you also, I want a bit of challenge that's beyond somebody just sniping me from a distance.
Do you think he's right? Because he says, I want more content, but don't you think that these games as a service are kind of the games that are giving you the content?
Not the content he's talking about. Cause
maps and...
Well, I think isn't he talking about more single-player content?
Oh. I think he was referencing having to play the same maps over and over again.
Somewhat, but he's also talking about the tedium of being sniped by a guy across the map over and over. And and I started to feel that just last night playing a little bit of Crucible and Destiny 2. It's like, wow, this is not what I care about. I don't care about what stupid, weird little tricky thing you can pull with your stupid shotgun in multiplayer that doesn't matter. I want to play content that takes place in this world and expands the world and is interesting and takes me somewhere and tells me something. And you almost never get that content from these games as a service. They're always maps and guns and bling and the game.
Emotes.
The game has not been the game as service that gives me, content that I get. Maybe EA was thinking about doing that with Mass Effect Andromeda, but
here's the game that's most guilty of it: League of Legends.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you play the same map every time. The only thing that changes in this is your skins. And granted, I will say League of Legends does probably the best job with skins of any game in the industry, because the skins in this game fundamentally change how a character looks and operates. It's not just a palette swap on their costume. It actually changes what they do and how their attacks work. So, and I mean, League of Legends really, isn't it the first example of a really successful game as a service?
I mean, it's certainly the template everybody uses now, I think. You're either using that or Hearthstone when it comes to it.
And does it really come down to the game being free? I mean, obviously Overwatch costs money, but I feel like this whole subgenre, for lack of a better term, was kind of birthed in the whole free-to-play market, and in some cases, like the mobile market.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of crossover there.
Yeah.
I can't really explain why League of Legends just, I guess, has a compelling method of play, and they get you, of the...
It's really deep. It's
yeah,
really what
and
it comes
of
down
the
to.
big
Yeah.
Dota clones, they all... I think League of Legends had the characters down first.
Yep.
I mean, the first time I heard about League of Legends was at PAX
Someone cosplaying
years ago,
probably.
and it was like, I mean, the game was just starting to get big, and all these people were walking around in these costumes, and none of us on the XSplit team knew what they were. I'm like,
Yeah.
and everyone's, because the usual way when we would be walking around somewhere like PAX or a convention or something, people would see people cosplaying, and someone would turn to me and say, "Who is that? Like, what is that?" Because I'm the
Right.
one who knew all that stuff.
No, it's like our
And I'm like,
camera-
I have no idea. I have no idea who the winged woman with the baking pan, like the cookies is. And like we started asking people, what are you? And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm Morgana from League of Legends in her baking outfit. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. So we went over to the Riot booth and we're like, who are you? And like that's how we discovered League of Legends, was people dressed up as all these characters. And like, I know that like it's kind of common now, especially that like people are dressing up as characters in games before the game's even out. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very thing. Ninja Theory put out like basically like outfit guides on what Senua is wearing in Hellblade in case people
Yeah.
want to. I mean, they gave people everything they could need for that.
That's smart.
But back then, this was like what 2010 or so,
Yeah.
2009, and like the idea that there are these people running around dressed, doing these amazing costumes out of these characters we'd never heard of. We're like, well, wow, this is really speaking to these people in some way.
And that's not a bad way for a developer to kind of test the waters for their character design. Is, do you think someone is going to cosplay this? Because I have a feeling if someone had went to Cliff Bleszinski and laid out his characters for Lawbreakers and said, Cliff, do you think people are going to cosplay as these characters? I think he would have said no.
A couple people did.
I'm sure
But it's
someone
like-
is going to, but
I mean, someone will dress as anything.
Right.
But in terms of like, there was a critical mass of League of Legends characters at PAX that year.
Yeah.
Like nothing I'd ever seen of a game I'd never heard of.
Yeah.
Like that was a new thing to me. Obscure Japanese games, whatever, okay, fine. But like this game I had never heard of, and you look it up, it's like, oh, millions of people are playing this game, and it had just been a corner we hadn't been aware of. And that was amazing to me. That was a big revelation. That was when I really thought like, oh, stuff's changing. Stuff's really changing. And you never know. Like character design it's an intangible thing that's hard to nail it down, and there's no objective correct or incorrect to it. It's just something sings or it doesn't to a certain audience. Like I think as laughable as a lot of the character designs in Battleborn are, I think a lot of them are more memorable than Lawbreakers.
no, way more. Yeah,
And-
even though you compare it to Overwatch, which we're
Right.
seeing right now.
Like
and it's
that,
a
I don't think is
joke.
right. But in terms, like I still know I could draw a vague picture of the giant guy with the tiny head from Battleborn,
Or the mushroom-headed
or the
guy.
mushroom-headed guy, or whatever. Way better than I could anyone in Lawbreakers. I don't,
With you 1,000,000%. Totally.
and that's like, and I don't know how you focus test that. Like sometimes that's just something you don't know until it gets out in the world. And
Well, is it one of those things where you say, I know it when I see it?
Kinda, yeah. But like,
Can't tell you what it
maybe,
is,
but
I
maybe
know it when I see
Cliff
it.
and the Boss Key guys thought they did know it when they saw it. Maybe that
Yeah.
was appealing to them, and like you can't fault them for that because it's their opinion on it. It's
Well,
like
you can fault them for it. I mean, they developed the game, and if they
Right.
make characters that people don't care about, it's their fault.
it is their
But-
fault, but it's like, how do you predict that?
Well, you
A
get
lot
an
of focus
artist who
testing,
has a
but-
track record of creating characters that are memorable. And, it is what it is. Water under the bridge at this point.
Oh, Lawbreakers isn't dead yet.
I don't know. It was down to 500,
I did see that. That was-
concurrent
yeah.
players on PC. And don't forget, Matt, PC was the platform this game was marketed on pretty much until the end.
Do you think, because a lot of there's been like Kroby Cat and those YouTubers kind of like throwing Cliff's old words back in his face on it. Do you think that was a factor, like his dismissal of the PC platform and then attempt to return to it?
I
Or do you
don't think so.
Like, I feel like that's not widely known enough to explain this.
I think it might, and we'll get to this here in a bit, but I think that might be an example of the new influencers kind of throwing the rotten apple into the barrel. And then that kind of spreading like a virus. I mean, I honestly don't know why the game is done so poorly. I still love to play it. I think it's really fun to play.
Yeah, I didn't buy it, but I did play the beta, and it's fun. I mean, it's too much. The learning curve is big enough that I know I'll never be good at it.
Yeah.
But I certainly feel that it's a good game in there.
Yeah. It's great to play. I love it. But again, the characters.
It feels good to play.
Yeah. In a character-driven world, if you don't have the characters to drive the game, you're in deep crap.
I did have the same problem I did when I first played Battleborn, where it took me forever to pick a character the first time I played because nothing jumped out at me as somebody I wanted to play as.
So they all just
Whereas Overwatch, I was like, oh, maybe him, maybe him. It took me a while because I had to pick between all the guys I wanted to try.
Yeah.
Whereas the others, I was like, I guess this one, and that's, as a fighting game fan, that's always the death knell.
It is, yeah. It's a quality artist. That's really what it comes down to, and Blizzard certainly has them. So the next question I want to ask these guys is about what is undoubtedly the biggest story in video games this year at this point. I don't think anyone can deny it. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds had sold 8 million copies at Gamescom. Yesterday, about a week and a half or 2 weeks later, it was announced it had sold 10 million.
It's hitting Minecraft.
It is.
Minecraft critical mass.
It is, without a doubt, the story in video games of 2017, and I honestly can't see anything else happening for the next 4 or 5 months that could trump it. It's insane. And as two guys, both guys, by the way, who have played shooters, Marcus especially, he's been a shooter player for a long time. He's fallen off a little bit in his later years, but seriously,
I know, but it just sounds like
he's really old.
You're writing his biography already or something.
I just know him really well. And he had kind of started weaning himself off shooters back in the Invisible Walls days. And, now it's kind of got to the point where he doesn't play them anymore. But he knows his stuff. So let's hear what Marcus has to say about PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
My finger's been hovering, and I'm now torn because it's going to be out on Scorpio.
It is.
So do I play on Scorpio, or do I double down and end up buying 2 copies, put one on on this laptop and play that? That one's obviously doing great guns.
Oh yeah, 8 million sold already.
Yeah, it's not even finished though.
Yeah, I mean
it's still technically in green light.
Crazy.
But yeah, again, people are having fun, but it's not ultra. My understanding is it's not ultra quick games. It's not like 5 seconds and you're dead.
No, it's not. I mean, the games can take a while, but I think the key to PUBG, as the kids call it, is that once you do die, you can immediately jump out of the game, and literally within a minute, you're playing another one. And I think that's kind of it's the trick that keeps people hooked on it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. And again, I want to see. I play the MMOs. I mean, I've just re-upped World of Warcraft for the umpteenth time to take a look at the new expansion. And WoW is still great, and I just think that
I'm surprised you're still playing WoW. That's crazy.
Well, I just wanted, I wanted to go in and have a look. I mean,
you don't have to make excuses. It's fine.
Well, I'm playing Elder Scrolls Online as well. I mean, since that went, technically free to play,
right?
They've evolved that game. It was a disaster when it launched.
Yeah.
But now it's really, really good, and I'm still hoping for a Fallout one. But these, I would love to see the MMOs come back and take advantage of the newer technology. And I just want a bit more of a, I want to go beyond the fast food gaming. I want a 3-course meal. And I think it's because I'm older. I mean, I don't have while I may not have the time that I used to have to burn into a game. And I know people are saying that's ironic now because I'm in recovery and so on, but I actually do sleep a lot. I mean, after this, I'm going for my afternoon nap because, again, I had the treatment this morning. Yeah, I mean, I miss being pulled in and immersed in that world. And I think, it's also getting old. I mean, I'm 47 this year. I know you're 68 and you're looking good though. But I mean, when we started off playing games, we weren't playing games for like 5 minutes and then like game over, we've been sniped or whatever. Yeah. We'd play for hours on end. And I think it's just, the market is changing. The people are changing. The younger generations, they're switching away from the TV. They're all tuning into YouTube and Twitch and watching the games being streamed, which I still think is the most boring thing on the planet. And again, no offense to those who stream the games. No offense to those who, watch. If you're enjoying it, more power to you. But I mean, it could be worse. You could be watching the Kardashians.
I mean, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, watching Rocket League on NBC Sports on a Sunday night, way better than watching reality TV crap. But again, still, it just boggles my mind that people will fill auditoriums to watch this. And I'm not saying it's because, there's no skill involved, because there obviously is skill and talent involved. I just think it's the most boring thing in the world to watch somebody else play a game. I want to play it myself. And, like I said, I think we're different. I mean, I remember when we'd sit at game trailers and one of us would be in the bay playing a game, recording the video, and people would just come up behind and start watching, but want to get their hands on the controller. They want to get it away from
chance, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the irony there is I would pay good money to watch Marcus play PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
As long as he had a microphone, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, because that game, I know Marcus, and I know what trips his trigger, and that game is just full of them. Mm-hmm. There's jank, there's unfortunate things that just kill you out of nowhere. There's a lot of luck involved in it. There's very little tactics or strategy. Mm-hmm. I could just see him losing it playing that game. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually ends up resonating with it or not. Have you played PUBG yet? You still haven't played it.
It's too expensive for me to impulse buy it. It just costs too much for an early access game to me.
Marcus just said the same thing. His finger's been hovering over it, and he hasn't pulled the trigger yet.
The only reason I would do it is because I feel like I have to play this thing that's such a big news story this year. I'll probably play it before the end of the year, because at some point you got to have that conversation. Does it qualify for the Game of the Year thing? Because it's not out yet. Technically, it's early access.
Here's my question. Is it considered finished when it comes out on Xbox One?
I don't know. But I don't know I don't know if they said if that's going to be 1.0 or
I don't know. I don't know.
Does it matter?
It doesn't really. I honestly would be surprised if it comes out this year.
Yeah. Well, it has a ways to go, especially if you watched anyone try to drive a boat.
Oh, I know.
In it, it's
I mean, the game is janky. It's a lot of people are talking about.
But do you wonder let's say they get around to doing the whole and they fix everything. It works beautifully and it's like AAA quality. Does that rob it of part of its charm?
Maybe.
Part of its appeal, especially as a spectator sport, for lack of a better term?
I don't know.
Is part of why people like watching this game is because of how crazy and janky and unpredictable it can be?
I guess, but I think if that were the case, then they wouldn't have bothered putting in clamoring animations and because when I first started playing it, you couldn't climb over anything. You had to find if there's a little wall that was 2 feet tall around a house. You couldn't jump over that wall or climb over it.
N64 style.
Right. You had to walk around and find the gate to get into the courtyard.
Well, apparently that was totally acceptable in Vice City.
Yeah. That was a long time ago.
Which to this day I have the argument with people Vice City's the best GTA. I'm like, no, the best GTA of that era is San Andreas because you could hop a goddamn fence.
Yeah.
But and you don't die in the water.
And that was a long time ago too.
Yeah, but I just wonder if eventually they might take it too far and make it too good, because I think I think the reason people watch it and the reason people like playing it are two different things in a lot of ways. And I think the key to the play. I mean, a lot of the gameplay concepts in that game are well worn, are done before.
Yeah.
I think the key to the game and the appeal of it in terms of players' success is what you said, where when you die, you're instantly thrown into a new game.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait. You're just the gameplay experience is all about you, and the only thing that matters to you is how long you live.
Yeah.
And as soon as you're dead, who cares who wins that game?
And then all you care about is how quickly
how do you get
respawn.
into a new game?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the fact that the game is so dedicated to making that a smooth and instant part of the experience is why I think that's where it gained its traction to begin with the player base. I think in terms of a viewer base, it's just the unpredictability and how crazy and how the best laid plans go completely to chaos in 5 seconds out of nowhere. It's just the tension of it. Even just watching something as simple as the Mediocre Monday stuff with Brent, it's you're watching him sneak around and run around and you're just waiting to see everything go to hell. And it never disappoints.
Yeah.
I'm not a person who watches stuff on Twitch. I've only watched a couple of Twitch streams of this game just to see what it was.
Yeah.
But I get it, Yeah. I'm not gonna sit down and watch it again, really, probably, but I get why people sit there and wait for it's a rewarding kind of there's a build, and there's a crescendo, and there's a denouement. Like it's a satisfying arc every time, and I get why people are into it so much. It makes sense to me, and that's why I remain a little skeptical of the idea that the big boys can copy this effectively.
Well, let's hear what Adam has to say about PUBG.
We're both kids of the 90s. This feels more to me like the indie scene of music and movies of the 90s than what we've been calling indie games for quite some time, which tended to be, I'm not diminishing them at all, but it was kind of, allowing for different voices and different perspectives. This allows for kind of that sort of daring innovation, doing something that on paper no publisher would want to do. Prove it can be done. Publisher then steps in and says, okay, here's even more money, go even polish this up, and we'll probably fund your next game, through eternity. And I think it's a very good thing, a very exciting thing.
Do you think that's what's going on here? It's a very astute point that Adam just made. Is it a blueprint for some of these smaller developers to... I mean, because look, already PlayerUnknown is rich beyond his wildest dreams.
Rather known.
Yeah, now he's known. The irony. I mean, he's rich. He's dirty rich at this point. He could sell... I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft comes in and offers just godly sums of money for
Microsoft
PUBG.
would be stupid not to try to secure like a year of exclusivity.
Anybody.
For this thing.
I mean, not even just secure exclusive for a year, just flat out buy it. Just
can that be done because it's an Arma mod?
It should be able to. Yeah. I mean, if that point, Microsoft just rebuilds the whole damn thing.
Right.
It's really about the IP and the idea. It's really the IP. Because look, like we've said before, people can copy this gameplay style. They could copy it easily. You could throw 400 guys at making a PUBG clone, and you could probably make a better game in a year. Less, probably. It's about the IP at this point. It's about PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. And you just throw a boatload of money at that. I wouldn't send Minecraft money after it. Mm-hmm. But certainly throw enough at it that he can just enjoy the rest of his life, which I think he probably already has enough money to do that anyway. But double that so you can enjoy 2 lifetimes of money and take this franchise. Because, going back to our earlier discussion, this is Microsoft's problem. It does not have games that people want to play that you can only play on Xbox. And I just think it would be missing a huge opportunity if it didn't. It already has its hooks in now. Like, it has the relationship. He feels good working with Microsoft already. Just go in for the kill at this point. But
yeah, I mean, if I were Microsoft, I'd throw whatever I had to at it to get it. I mean, you've already done Minecraft, and I think this is I think the closest we've seen to Minecraft sales critical mass since Minecraft.
No, you're right. Where it's just like Minecraft every week, it's another...
Because Minecraft had that thing where it took like a year and a half to get to 1 million, and then it took like 4 months to get to 5 million.
Yeah.
It's just like all of a sudden it just the dam broke.
It hit critical mass.
It just went crazy, and everybody went for it. And this is almost even more impressive because this thing costs twice as much as Minecraft, I think, or more, $10 more maybe. I can't remember. Is this 30 or 40?
It's $30.
Okay, so Minecraft was 10.
Right.
And then it later became 20. Yeah. At first it was 10. I bought it for 10, I remember, when it hit the beta.
On that janky website that they were selling it on. So
this one's $20 more, and it's still selling like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's not even done.
Yeah.
Now, it was Minecraft. But like, if I were Microsoft, I'd be looking real hard because PUBG is the weird, PUBG is the weird, it's the weird, unique moment where it's like, here's a thing that you can play on PC. It started on PC, but you can't play it on console. And so to capture the people who want to play this on console, that's your move. Whereas because it's one of the few moments you're not going to have to share that with Sony by default.
Yeah.
So I think you're right that this would be a big feather in the cap.
It's a huge opportunity
that hits an audience that I think, even though it's also a shooter, I think hits an audience that's very different from Halo and Gears.
And to Adam's point, kind of the whole process of this game becoming a success. This guy building it, going into early access, doing really well, and then the sharks coming in to buy the company or buy the game. It is kind of interesting, and it's something you haven't really seen all that much. I mean,
it's Minecraft.
Minecraft and this is kind of it.
So I think this definitely establishes the idea that if you have an idea that sounds crazy, but you can execute it properly, and you know it's a winner. I mean, this guy clearly knew there was something to this.
Well, if you remember at Gamescom, they asked him what it is about the game that's made it so successful, and he just flat out said, I have no idea. I love that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people would be like, well, you know, I knew all along. It was just a matter if we got our break.
Well, it's like the whole thing, you know, like you sit in meetings about like, oh, we're doing this thing, and how do we get it to go viral, and who do we do the tweet, and we'll get these people to tweet this and this, that. But the truth is, you can't control that. No one can control something blowing up or going viral or getting huge. No one could recreate PewDiePie.
No.
You know, that happened organically, and all the big stuff like that always happens organically. You couldn't predict Minecraft. Minecraft wasn't the first block building mining.
No, I know.
It was a ton to Infiniminer and a bunch of other games before it, but it's the one that blew up.
Yeah. And
you can't predict that.
No. You got to start the spark.
Yeah.
Someone has to start the spark, and then you just got to pray.
Yeah.
That little gust of wind comes along.
It's also why, my cynical answer to why haven't other shooters jumped on the PUBG idea faster is my cynical answer to that is who cares?
Yeah.
Because PUBG already did it.
Yeah.
You know? And like,
but
it's all, I mean, there's probably money to be made there, yeah, but not on the level of that. And I think you're in the same situation as with like the Dota stuff, where like, yes, Dota 2 is successful, Heroes of the Storm is successful, but are they League of Legends? No. League of Legends is.
But I don't think every game needs to be that successful, though. And I think if you played PUBG, your perspective will be a little different, because you would realize that it could very easily be drastically improved.
Mm-hmm. You know what game it reminds me of when I watch it is State of Decay.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Like it has that sort of like run around an open area with a bunch of cabins and look in drawers.
Yeah,
thing. And I find that oddly compelling.
Pretty accurate. Or pick stuff up off the ground. Yeah. All right, we're gonna move on next. Obviously, a big topic that has kind of, I wouldn't say broke over the last couple years, but really kind of gone mainstream, is esports.
It's been floating around. Yeah.
This is something that's happened since both Marcus and Adam have kind of disappeared from covering games. And Adam, as someone who we both worked with in television at G4, I figured he would have a very unique perspective on this. Let's hear what he had to say.
This is funny, Shane, because you and I worked on X-Play together, which was on television. This need for people to the sense of validation that people are looking for because the thing they love is on the television screen is very perplexing to me. Yeah. Especially because the monitor that I'm talking to you on and the television I have in the background, they're just screens now.
Right.
But somehow when it's televised, by cable, it means, oh, we've made it. And I don't think esports were ever really going to catch on. Those Dota numbers for ESPN2 were nice, but I don't think that they were reliable. Whereas I do think that esports, by streaming, those numbers are very, very significant by an internet standard, and there's a way to monetize that. Where I think esports has a huge challenge ahead is it's kind of like the whole problem with like the various like the boxing titles. Like, why are there three? When you try to see someone like, there's three different belts and you unify the belts, like an average person is like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
It's so disorganized, and that the idea that is someone the best at something, I think is very challenging to the average person. I think more so the most popular games that people are watching right now are very hard to understand if you are not a player of that game. And that's where I think the televisual or just the visual experience of watching games that don't have the same sense of competition, like Friday the 13th and Battlegrounds, I think really could change the alchemy here because they're just fun to watch people play. That it's not so much like I'm going to put on my jersey for my favorite Battlegrounds player, hold a beer and cheer him on. It's just a very, very entertaining thing to watch. That once again, we're trying to map sports onto esports.
Right.
I think that we've seen with with all these things like that the two aren't synonymous. It's not like you can just throw on sports and televise it like sports and think that you're going to end up with the same result as the NFL. I think it needs a lot more innovation, but no, I don't think it's going to succeed out of it.
Do you think the kind of recent push towards geographical identification in esports, because like right now the NBA is getting into esports and they're going to have the Los Angeles Lakers esports team, and there's going to be the Philadelphia 76ers. Do you think that helps by sort of engendering interest from a region versus just saying, hey, this is some dude from somewhere else, you should care about him?
It helps with curation. For the person that doesn't know how to even understand anything in esports, it's like, well, there's an LA team, so it makes it a little bit easier. Attaching the Lakers to an esports team, though, just strikes me as, it kind of goes back to what I was just saying. There's just no reason for that. And it's almost kind of patronizing, like, we know you go crazy for the Lakers, kid, so you're going to go crazy for the Lakers esports team. It's, young people are a little more savvy to kind of to see through stuff like that. And it's like kind of going back to like old G4. I always felt that the station initially had kind of a cynical origin. It was like, yeah, games are big. We put them on the TV. They'll come flocking.
Right.
And it's that lack of understanding of the dynamics of this medium versus other mediums that usually create all of these stumbles that become embarrassing and kind of alienate, that, because you need to start with the core audience. I just don't see how doing that creates that core audience.
Dude, I think Adam, right out of the gate, he kind of starts talking about something that I think in the end he proves being incorrect. And he starts off by talking about how when people see something they love on the TV, it makes a difference and it has like a greater impact. But I think what the problem with esports is that the millennials and the kids have completely gotten over that. They don't look at TV like that like we used to. Or they don't have cable, right?
Yeah. I think the generation in the audience that the idea of watching esports would most appeal to don't have any way to watch it on actual television because they don't have cable subscriptions because they either don't care or they can't afford it.
I think only people over 30, maybe even a little older, are the only people who still care about on TV, about being on TV.
I think the people who are involved in the e-sport itself are, because I know like Evo has been on ESPN2 the last 2 years, the finals, and everybody who's involved now, the fighting game pros, like everybody's very excited about that. They do feel it's validating, but I don't know if the main audience.
But you're talking about the announcers though, who are in their 30s. They're old enough to get that. The competitors, I don't think care whether it's on a stream or on television or on someone's cell phone.
Oh, I think it matters to some degree. Although maybe it matters less that they're on TV and more that they're in the Mandalay Bay Arena thing,
and in front of a
venue is impressive. Yeah. I mean, I agree with him in the sense that it's just, I don't think it's ever going to get there because it's too, like the medium is too old for what it's trying to portray. It's
you're absolutely right.
Like you're up against a wall with, the younger audience not having the means to watch it through cable or whatever. They also don't want to sit down and watch it at a particular time. Or if they do, they want to be able to watch it on their phone or some other place that TV doesn't pop up because you don't put cable on. I mean, unless you're talking about like HBO Go or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just, as much as people care about esports stuff, I just don't think enough people consider it appointment television to want to like drop everything and watch it on TV.
Right.
Like it's more of a thing that you pull, people pull it out on their phone when they're waiting for something. Or I mean, I think it's almost a mobile game in some way in that sense.
Esports on TV is a worse experience. And then you look at traditional sports like the NFL, watching the NFL on TV is a superior experience.
Right.
And so people are stopping going to the live games, and they're more than happy to pay $300 a year for a Sunday ticket and sit at home and watch all the games or just watch whatever games come on their local networks. But yeah, television and esports, it feels like they're just going different directions. And right now they're just kind of passing each other, and eventually they're going to...
Well, see, I think outside of the social context of it, I think watching Evo on stream is better than being there in person because you get the commentary, you get more complete stuff. However, no TV station is going to air 3 straight days of that.
No.
You're never
going to air the polls.
Right. It's not going to, and
not
so...
going to happen.
Yeah, so who cares? I think the big test here, I still think the two things that are most likely to gain any traction in televised esports is PUBG, even though that first one didn't go so well.
Yeah.
And fighting games.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think could be a big test, and who knows if this is even going to work out, is the next Olympics. because they are submitting games as esports, but then
No
they said no
violent
violence,
games.
which is hilarious because you have boxing and fencing and taekwondo, you hypocrites.
Of course, yeah.
But again, like I think an argument can be made if you need to sneak something in there and they won't let you put PUBG or Overwatch or something, like you could probably get away with Street Fighter.
Maybe.
Because they have
It's
taekwondo.
violent,
You could be
though.
like, yeah, but they have boxing and taekwondo.
I hear you, but I hear you.
Like that's the argument I'd go for.
I agree with you a
Because
million
otherwise,
percent.
what is it? Competitive Candy Crush? Like what?
Fake. It's not real. They're not real people fighting.
You're also not shooting at real birds in the biathlon. Like I don't know
Right.
what to tell you.
But here's
man.
another example.
But I
of
think the way
older people running something that they
Right.
don't get.
Right, but all you need to do to get the Olympic Committee on board is show them the
Money. That's it.
Going back to
what
Adam's
we were
answer
talking about
previously.
earlier.
But I think putting something like, and people will freak. It was like the Olympics is like, look, as long as like target shooting is a sport in the Olympics, you got nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when the Olympics started in the early 20th century, chess was an event.
Yeah.
So there's precedent. You know, it doesn't have to be something that you have to have like. I mean, people say, oh, if you don't sweat, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, no one's sweating in the target shooting competition or the archery competition, but it still takes a level of coordination that I don't have.
Precision, skill.
I couldn't get up and do that. And in the
Yeah.
same way that I couldn't get up and win that archery competition or win that target shooting competition, I also could not win that Dota competition.
No, you're right.
Because that is a physical skill that I don't have. And maybe you need to have played it to understand that, but like, it would be interesting to me if they actually get traction on that as a test sport in the next Olympics, how you present that and how you contextualize that along with the other Olympic events, assuming the Olympics even have any respect left by that point.
Yeah.
That is going to be a very interesting situation to see if it could be accepted and if someone can figure it. Because like I always
Assuming
bring up,
that a city will actually take the Olympics at that point.
oh, I mean, they
because
got them. The new one, and LA's got them. In
Yeah.
was it 2024 or something like that?
I think by the time our lives are up, the Olympics are going to be in deep
Oh,
crap.
it'll be
Yeah.
only so. Well, the problem has been for the last few that they've been targeting kind of developing countries, and there's no excuse for making a developing country spend that kind of money on infrastructure that's never going to be used again. Go look at what the Rio like facilities look like now. They look like they've been abandoned for. They look like you
It's
could play
been
PUBG in them.
And it's
basically.
been like a year.
Yeah, they look like a new PUBG map.
You're right.
Basically, it's like everything's just broke down. But like LA's got the infrastructure to do it. LA's got a concentration of tech. LA's got a concentration of esports athletes that could put on a show if they got a chance at that point. It's going to be interesting to see if anybody decides to take the bait on that. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know what games you would focus on for that. But if the money's there, it could happen. I think the main problem is like who's going to watch it.
Yeah. Not me.
No, probably not. I mean, I'll probably watch if Street Fighter gets in the Olympics.
I'll watch
that.
That's about the only thing, though. That's the only way I'd watch it.
But I probably wouldn't watch League of Legends Olympic event.
And I play League, and I probably still wouldn't watch it. I just wouldn't. So I know you guys can't wait to hear what what Marcus has to say about esports.
Also, contrary to what Adam said there, I'm pretty sure no one who founded G4 ever said the word a flockin'.
No.
I can't see Charles Richard saying that.
Nope. All right, let's hear from Marcus on esports.
I would, and look, and this is somebody again who finds esports incredibly boring. I think TV needs esports more than esports needs TV.
That's a good point.
I think the networks know that, especially in the US, viewer figures for the NFL are in the toilet. People are getting quite sick of watching, when you know what's going on with the players who've got concussions, and you see all the bullshit with Kaepernick where he's getting, kicked out or blackballed, if you will, or whiteballed because of his protests. And then there's guys who beat the crap out of their girlfriends or wives who just get 6-week suspensions. People are getting tired of that hypocrisy. People are tired of how much everything costs for a jersey, for a game day experience, if you can even get a ticket without going to, a tout. And if you're watching it on TV, you have to buy the NFL package. Yeah. And, it's people are moving to look to other things. But I mean, the beauty of, our society today is that this generation that's coming through that are watching Twitch, they are perfectly happy doing that on their iPad. They don't need perhaps the big screen experience that we like, where I've got my 70-inch TV and my surround sound so I can watch Liverpool tonk Arsenal 4-0 on a Sunday morning. You can watch your beloved Steelers. They don't need that. They're perfectly happy to be on the smaller devices, have a more intimate thing, and react to, and interact with people as they do it.
Do you think that's really the rub with esports on television, is that it lacks that interaction because you don't have sort of that built-in chat with the community right there?
Which is a good thing, because the last thing you want on your television network is somebody saying, "Show us your tits."
Yeah, I mean, that's something that broadcast will never be able to offer, right? Because of that very reason, everything needs to be screened before it goes to air.
Yeah. Well, I also think that while again that I understand why people want that level of interactivity and connectedness, I don't think it's necessarily a good idea, because we've seen what's happened. We've seen what's happened to the games industry in general, and then how that's become a microcosm of what's affected, Britain and the US, and certain sections of the world over the last 18 months to two years, when people without knowledge or experience, or dare I say common sense, are allowed to voice an opinion, they will go to the lowest common denominator. They will harass somebody to say, "Get your boobs out," or they call somebody a homophobic slur or racial slur, just to get a reaction,
attention.
Yeah. And I honestly, there's a reason why I did my own little podcast for a while called No Comments Allowed, which I put on SoundCloud. And that was the idea. It was me talking about something I knew a lot about, passing my opinions on something I knew a lot about, opinions that have been curated over a 25-year period, quarter of a century.
Yeah.
And then no comments. I'd interact with a couple of people over Twitter or whatever, but I didn't want anybody coming in there and just bitching and moaning. And I just think that, I've said this before, the advent of the internet has given people a voice. But what we have found is that voice, on a lot of occasions, deserves to be silenced.
That's great. Marcus really nailed it right out of the gate, though, when he said TV needs esports more than esports needs TV. That was...
Like, TV is generally struggling to find a reason for people to watch it.
Yeah.
Especially with, like, the way you've traditionally kind of detected how well something's doing. Like, the Nielsen rating system doesn't work anymore and hasn't worked for a very long time, but no one changes it over. The Nielsen system has the ability to see what every individual television is watching if you wanted it to, but no one does it because of privacy concerns, as though what you're watching is some kind of a secret. But unless you're watching the Spice Channel, I don't see what the problem is. But
does that channel still exist?
I hope not. That's reaching back into the 90s a little bit there, but I hope somewhere it does.
It does.
Somewhere.
Romania or something.
Yeah, it's like how G4 Tech TV still exists in Canada.
Canada, yeah.
But God knows what they run. But it's still there. There's little satellite dishes with the logo on them still.
It's really weird because it was only ever called G4 Tech TV for like 3 months.
Yeah, very briefly here, but the name stayed in Canada for some reason.
It. Really weird. So the last topic that we're going to discuss, no big surprise. We're all people who have worked in games journalism at various levels and locations and publications for decades now. And I think it only makes sense for us all to kind of discuss together, with these two guys via pre-recorded interviews about where games journalism is headed. Adam, and I will say these interviews are edited, and eventually I will put up the full interviews with both these guys, and they're worth watching. Marcus talks a lot about his physical issues he's had, his health issues. Adam talks a little bit about, will he ever come back to games criticism and things like that. So we'll be posting the full interviews. We just pulled excerpts for the show. But I will say one thing, Adam really has no desire to come back and do this again, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
None.
That doesn't surprise me, but I know him pretty well.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we both do, but I was still pretty surprised by that.
It's hard to, the other thing is he works in a segment of the industry he really enjoys and is interested in. He's mostly his own boss.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to it's hard to go from being your own boss to going back to answering to corporate nonsense again.
Yeah.
Which is as well because you are your own boss.
Yeah. Well, it may not be for long.
Yeah.
If our Patreon doesn't pick up, I may be going right on back there. So.
But it's like, if you don't have to, why would you? And,
believe me, I wouldn't if I didn't have to.
And let's be honest. Like, we have our niche here in what we do and YouTube stuff and all that kind of thing. There's still the IGNs of the world, but it's like. It's not a growth sector.
No, it's not.
Like, it's not. We were lucky to be in that weird golden age where we could have a TV show about games, and we could. That period before, like that kind of period between the magazines and the YouTube stuff, where we just sort of came into that tech and internet world, and sort of figured out how it worked.
Yeah.
Like, we got to live that, and that was great. Yeah. Like, maybe like 50 people got to do what we did in the world.
It's true.
And that's great. I mean, I would never trade that for anything, but the problem is, and I think we came out of it better than most because we had skills in television and production, very different things. There's people, like, I always would look at people that just wrote, text reviews and worry about, like, what happens if this all goes away one day, and we're kind of in that right now.
Yeah. Well, let's hear from two legends from what they think. Let's start this one off with Marcus.
I think the games industry has an age problem and is struggling with it. It's because, we've grown up with the industry. We've grown older with the industry. And the unfortunate, there is still, and again, something I've said for a very long time, there is still a perception that video games are a young man's gig, or a young woman's gig, or a young person's gig.
Yeah.
When it isn't. People of all ages can play games and enjoy them. And I think you see, yes, the salary dump is an issue. We've gone from print to online. We've seen ad revenues tank. We've gone to the worst possible scenario of the influencer. There's a reason that influence rhymes with effluence, because effluence is shit, and so are most of these influencers.
Yeah.
You show me somebody with 50,000 followers on Instagram, and they're hawking this, that, and the other, and they're getting paid for it and not declaring it, given the FCC rules that are in place.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you saw EA's press conference at E3 where it employed a lot of the quote-unquote influencers, and they ended up doing not, I don't want to be too mean, but they did not do a great job. And, obviously you have millions of people watching, and when it's live, there's no do-overs.
Look, when I went to have my heart surgery done, I went to it was a cardiologist, not a barista. If you're going to host a press conference to millions of people around the world on a multi-billion-dollar industry with IPs like Star Wars Battlefront, FIFA, Madden, and Titanfall, and whatever you've got,
the Need for Speed guy was probably the worst of them all.
You don't pick fanboys.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Fan is short for fanatic. And we, again, the problem we have had in the games industry for the longest time is that there've been way too many fanboys. And now because everybody wants their personal validation, it's like, validate my decision. If I was a total moron, I'd expect you to say I was wonderful and brilliant for being brave enough to order a Scorpio. But it's my fucking choice, my money.
Yeah, it is.
I don't need a pat on the head for saying that. And you're
not getting it from me anyway.
Well, but this is it. I mean, I shouldn't expect that, and I shouldn't expect my choices and preferences to be validated and accepted by everyone. I shouldn't have somebody saying, "Well, oh, you're wonderful. You're gonna go and get, P-Bug." Player unknown bug, the chicken dinner
PUBG.
game. Yeah, PUBG. There you go. It's like, or you haven't bought a Switch yet. You're an arsehole.
Right.
Which is something that you do get. Mm-hmm. And no, I'm not buying a Switch. It's not for me. People are loving it. Great. I have problems with Nintendo. I always have. And those problems continue when they continue to underservice the market just so that they can have the cachet of a product that's scarce.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they do it. If they put enough out there to satisfy demand, people will be a lot happier. Plus, I still can't stand Zelda. So, and again, I've got nothing against people who...
Even though Zelda's a lot like Bethesda's open world action RPGs now, you still didn't resonate with you.
Look, I haven't played Zelda on the Switch. I mean, I played the last one on the Wii or whatever, or the Wii U or whatever it was on. I can't remember. But I mean, it's just not my cup of tea. I know you are a huge Zelda fan.
Yeah, and I honestly didn't. I did not like the new Zelda as much as most. I liked it a lot and thought it was good, but I feel like once it changed genres, it was held to a different standard. And for me, comparing it to the best open world action RPGs in the genre, to me it fell short. I think a lot of people were looking over a lot of flaws because it was Zelda and it sort of had that paint on it.
Well, I think that is still an issue. I mean, we touch back to that fanboy issue. People will bow down and kiss the turds that come out of some people's asses because it has Zelda attached to it, or Metal Gear, or Gran Turismo, or whatever games we're talking about, and nothing is judged on its own individual right anymore. I mean, I got caught up in it. Fallout 4. I loved Fallout 4 when it first came out, but then I started to realize it wasn't as good a game as I hoped because it didn't have a lot of the options that Fallout 3 and New Vegas had.
Yeah.
And that's we're all guilty of that. But I think that if this industry is to evolve, it has to do something that the rest of the planet hasn't been able to do, and basically start giving people, getting a consumer base that's actually quite respectful. I'm not going to call somebody a dick because they're a Zelda fan.
Right.
Marcus from maybe 6 years ago might have because, I played it, I just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
But I've got maybe grown up a little, God forbid. But I respect that people do enjoy these games. The same reason they do enjoy Final Fantasy, which, the last one to me looked like the Backstreet Boys on tour.
Yeah.
I not my cup of tea at all. I mean, like I said, I finished with 8. I loved 8. That was it. But I'm not going to slag you off for playing Animal Crossing, even though I tried it and it bored me to tears. But I just don't think we can do that anymore. I think we need as a society to basically have our asses kicked and get to the situation of, well, we will respect each other's differences, unless you're a Nazi. If you're a Nazi, you can go fuck yourself. And here we go. This is where it'll be. Oh, Marcus Beer brings politics into it. Blah 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 blah. Look, if you're a Nazi supporting, all the crap that's the bad crap that went on in Charlottesville, and you want to have your little right-wing marches, 10-1 you're a Gamergator as well. So do us all a favor. It's not about ethics. It's about you being wankers. But look, we've got to grow up as an industry. We've all got to grow up as an industry. We've got to grow up as a society. We've got some great games coming out in the next 12 months. I mean, we got the new Red Dead.
Yeah.
Finally, we got a new Red Dead.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's ironic that I still think that the best game of the last 5 years was the last GTA.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the top-selling game all these years later.
I'm playing GTA Online. I'm going in and now they're actually doing a sort of an update that's going to make it kind of player unknown Battlegrounds, PUBG.
Yeah, it just launched yesterday actually.
Yeah. And I mean, that's great because they keep on going and doing this. And I've gone in and I still think that's the best game of the 5, maybe even the best game of the decade. I mean, beating out, some of the others like the Fallouts and Skyrims and
sales-wise, it's not even close. I mean, it continues to be in the top 10 every month
because it's a fantastic game over and over.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, I came late to the Red Dead party. I really did. I mean, Redemption was the one that I played, but I played after watching you guys playing it over and over, and I really began to enjoy it. So yeah, the new one is going to be great. We've got a bunch of cool indie titles coming, which are going to be a lot of fun for people. I've got hopefully my Crackdown. Got a new South Park game.
That's right. Yeah, I'm excited for that game.
Yeah, Fractured Butthole. I mean, look, if you haven't played Stick of Truth, by the way, if anybody out there has not played Stick of Truth, I just replayed it all the way through for like the 3rd time. I've done once on PS3 and now twice on PC. And this time I actually went and made sure I got a walkthrough and got all the fun little bits. But it's still just one of the best written games.
It is, yeah.
And it just goes, that's great licensed content. So I know there's people who are going to be pissed that I don't like Overwatch or I don't like Hearthstone or I don't like, I don't want to get into, and it's not a question of not liking. They don't appeal to me. They're not my cup of tea. It's not, I don't hate them, but they're not my cup of tea. I mean, Fortnite is another one, Paragon. and more power to these people who are doing this stuff. But am I interested in Destiny 2? I played the beta. Felt like Destiny to me.
Yeah, I thought the campaign was a lot better than the first Destiny, though.
Okay, I mean, I maybe need to put more hours into it, but again, might just wait again until the October release of the PC version.
Right.
Because apparently, it's going to be better on Battle.net.
It's looking great on PC.
Yeah, but we've got a lot to be thankful for. Let's just hope that we still have an industry and a planet and a country to enjoy it over the next. Like, I didn't go through all this shit just to have Korea blow us up, floods and earthquakes and biblical, whatever.
Yeah.
And all this crap. I expect to be around for 40 odd years, and I want to be able to breathe. I want to be able to eat, and I want to be able to drink water without having to sort of like drink it from my ankles because I've developed webbed feet. So we just need to get with the program.
Well, there you go. The return of Grumpy McGrump.
So he thinks games editorial will not go away?
I don't know.
I don't know.
know.
It sounds like he has bigger concerns.
He certainly does, yes. That was, I mean...
You can't have a games journalism world if there's no world.
That's a good point. Yeah. That was the first time in the whole interview where Marcus went back to his old form. Annoyed Gamer.
That was some vintage Annoyed Gamer action.
It was, yeah. And he was called Grumpy McGrump on Invisible Walls before he was anointed the Annoyed Gamer. So... yeah. A lot of times
he said beta, not beta.
He did? Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard him say beta, not beta before.
Well, there's a lot of times when you do interviews.
He's got to go back to Wales. Yeah. He's losing the mojo.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of times when you do interviews and you realize they're flying off the rails and they're not answering the question. And I realized it pretty much immediately, but I just saw Marcus take flight.
Right.
And I was just like, there he is. He's like that little eagle that you raised, and then he just takes off and flies. And I was like, I'm just going to let him go. So there you go. You guys have been waiting to hear Marcus. You just heard him.
A true return.
Yep. And Adam has a more traditional answer to the question about games editorial. Let's hear what he had to say.
I don't see it headed to a very good place. It's less the issue with the influencers. I'll get back to that in a second, but you're right. It's that. And this is happening in the press because we're seeing New York Times, which I think is doing well, still having to lay off workers. Yeah. And that, we're constantly hearing about the pivot to video, which is
insane.
And so much of that comes from the fact that no one has figured out how to generate ad revenue online. And so the money's not coming in like it once did for all of these sites. And they're having to let go of the senior staff. The real danger I see with letting go of the senior staff is you're bringing in young people, which is good, because you always want to have sort of a new energy and new voices, but you don't have a senior staff to kind of guide them. To kind of say like, hey, when you're young and you're being a critic, you tend to want to show your chops just by attacking everything. Yeah. That by being critical, you can show your ability for criticism.
Right.
And it takes older people, to sometimes kind of show the way, kind of cool things off. And so I think that's why you see these very sort of fiery think pieces all the time. I think sometimes are a little bit outside of logic. They're so from inside, the most inside baseball perspective. And once again, they're not bringing in a larger audience. It becomes this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. I think the only solution, people are probably going to attack me for this, is that you're going to start to see less game-centric sites. And what you're going to see is games being covered in more general purpose publications, digital publications, like the Washington Post, like the Daily Beast, something like that, where it's, just like you have the movie section and you have that section, you'll have a section that maybe is tucked into the technology area where you have one or two staffers who are ruminating and reviewing games. I don't really see where this goes. I don't blame influencers and streamers for the cause of this. They generate a lot of good audience, but they really are entertainers through and through. And I think they're serving something very different for that audience. There's still people out there that want to learn about games, and they're not going, necessarily to most of the streamers and influencers for that. Streamers and the influencers are just they're working in this new medium that I never anticipated, where someone will watch someone else talk for 3 hours.
Right, yeah.
Video game. But the audience is there.
Do you think that maybe, and look, I watch entirely too many video game podcasts because it's the nature of SIFTD. We have to watch the content before we decide to curate it to the site. So I watch everything. And one thing I've really noticed over the last several years running the site is that you don't get a lot of criticism from the bigger publications. A lot of the bigger publications on their shows, they just kind of sit there and they talk about the stuff that they like, and then they kind of all agree with each other. It seems like the more biting criticism I see is on YouTube. And, you know, you kind of talked about how some of their criticism may be misguided and not as well informed maybe as it should be. But do you think maybe that's why a lot of the younger audience is going to YouTube, is because that's where they actually find some criticism of games and some biting opinions, whether they agree or disagree with it?
See, it's interesting because I don't listen to a lot of gaming podcasts. I just don't have the time, and it's not essential for what I do. So I'm just going to take you at your word that you don't see much criticism there. I see criticism on sites, in articles and stuff like that.
Right.
Definitely people who write for those sites on Twitter who seem to almost have an unhealthy, jaundiced view of what's happening inside of the industry. But kind of to your point, okay, back when I was doing Sessler Soapbox, and my God, this just happens when someone still, God forbid, recognizes me from my days in television. It's like, oh, I love when you did that thing when you would rant about the video games. And, even at G4, if like suddenly the numbers for Sessler Soapbox were declining, they're like, yeah, can you do an angry one? And I think that this kind of form of populism that we're seeing, especially on YouTube, which is the game industry is evil. Without me, they will, rub their evil hands together and take advantage of you. That like that's a good way to generate an audience. People just gravitate towards anger, and I do think that there are people at sites who are kind of aware of that, of sort of the dangerous end game if you go down that path, and that tends to manifest itself like that maybe in the podcast. But yeah, there's a populist anger I definitely see on YouTube that I could probably say a lot of my former colleagues are a little bit wary of, because that can sometimes, I don't want to slam anybody out there, but when you start to do that, and I would say even I probably fell victim to that, you can start to chip away at truth and logic in favor of that kind of fun back and forth with you getting ranty and ravey and your audience going, yes, let's grab our pitchforks.
What do you think about that, Matt?
I mean, I think he's pretty right on.
He's pretty spot on, yeah.
And I think especially because I would trace kind of a lot of the YouTube gaming critic culture back to the angry video game nerd.
No, you're right.
Who kind of pioneered that.
He started. Let's be honest.
I mean,
it's
in the name, right?
I mean, technically, Angry Video Game Nerd started game trailers. I mean,
right.
He was the king of our user movies, who then we then signed a deal with and had exclusively with him, and then Screw Attack after that. But he was really the first YouTuber.
Yeah.
And he
at least in this space, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he set the precedent. He laid down the template for what was to come.
And I think the important takeaway from him, and it's something that maybe got lost in the evolution of it over the years, is that one of the reasons I think he was popular back then in the early days was not just that he was angry, but that he was angry, but he was angry at the games because of that way we all get angry at games, because it's, when you come down to it, it's one of the few entertainment media where it's you against the medium.
Yeah.
You're not competing with a movie. You're not trying to beat the book.
Right.
Yeah. But there are points at which the game is trying to stop you from having fun in a way.
Yeah.
And he was one of the first people, I think, to really acknowledge and really play up the idea that getting angry at these things is part of why we love it.
Yeah.
And the anger in the Angry Video Game Nerd, at least in the classic stuff, I stopped following years ago on that stuff, around the time he made that movie.
Yeah.
But
I think he may have lost a few people.
But the classic stuff, especially like the old NES Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing and all that stuff, it's a recognizable feeling. It's that the raging sort of throwing the controller, punching the couch feeling of getting stuck on these things. That's part of the experience, and that was being acknowledged maybe for the first time in a visceral way, because it's hard to convey that through text. I think he was really taking advantage of the video medium that was starting to become a thing on the internet at that time, because you're starting to be able to have the bandwidth to do it. And I think a lot of it comes out of there. I mean, I watch Angry Joe periodically, but I see a lot of Angry Video Game Nerd in his approach. He
he
makes it his own.
The whole idea.
He makes it his own in a lot of ways, but it's still that same idea of like guy ranting about video game with skits.
Yeah.
Which also, I mean, was X-Play.
It was.
To be fair, I mean,
Yeah.
that was trying to form for years and years, and I think Angry Video Game Nerd kind of is the one that crystallized it best.
He also has the perfect name. So he has Angry, which you got into. The anger you have, this weird push and pull you have with this relationship with the video games that you're playing. Video game.
Well, he was originally Nintendo, wasn't he?
It was.
Originally the Angry Nintendo
Nerd, and he had to change it.
Which has a nice alliteration to
Yep.
it. I can see why you go with that.
Yeah. Video game, obviously, so you know what the content's about. And then nerd.
Right.
And I think that is just important as the angry part, because he is a nerd. And that's not me making a derogatory comment about him. He'll call himself that. He's legit. And I think that's what people saw in him right away, is that he's real. He's like me. He loves video games. He doesn't care about all this other frivolous pop culture BS. He loves games. And that name, I think, just Angry Nintendo Nerd.
Boom, boom, boom.
And it was good.
Yeah, but I think Adam at the end there hits on a very important point, that the more you play that up and the more you buy into that, you can chip away at truth.
Yeah.
And while it is important that you see yourself in the Angry Nintendo Nerd, the Angry Video Game Nerd, it's important to know if you've ever met that guy, he's playing a character. To a large degree. I mean,
he's not so much, though, really.
But he is not that screaming crazy person that is portrayed in the skits all
No,
the time.
he's really quiet. Yeah, he's a quiet guy. He's a nerd. I mean,
but he's putting on a persona. Like, if you spend a day with him, he probably would not try to throw the couch at the television.
No.
It's not like that. So, like, but you end up in that thing where it's, is Alex Jones playing a character or not? Nobody knows. Like, it's like, there was a lawsuit where his lawyer said he's just playing a character. He's not really this crazy. And then he got up on the stand and was like, I'm totally believe everything I say. But is he the character or is he himself? Like, you don't know anymore.
Right.
And, like, there's not that dividing line between fiction and reality has been degrading ever since Survivor went on the air, really. I mean, the reality TV boom kind of created this thing where we want to see ourselves on the screen in a way that we didn't have to see ourselves on the screen in previous times. And I think that this kind of is part of that whole trend. And I agree with him that after a while, it's very hard to tell what's real and what's not.
I also agree with him.
And video games, fandom in video games, I think, increasingly sets the tone for internet discourse. And I think there's a responsibility there that we are not fully acknowledging as fans of this medium.
And I also think that getting positive reinforcement for being angry creates this self-perpetuating cycle where you want to get more angry, so you get more positive feedback, and it can be dangerous.
And it's like, I recently had some discussions with some people about, like, how long this particular thing should be. And they're like, well, we think it's too long. We think it should be more like 7 minutes long, because that's how long internet videos should be. And so I pulled up a 2.5-hour deconstruction of why Fallout 3 sucks.
Yeah.
That had 2 million views. And I'm like, boom. Like, long-form stuff is important, but here's the important thing. Look at the long-form stuff that's really popular right now in the video game space. It's almost exclusively really, really long teardowns of games.
Yeah.
Really, really long reasons why things suck. And, like, that's where the appeal is. It's like, you want to see someone just take this game you hate apart. It's become a spectator sport.
It's Schadenfreude.
Yeah. And it's like...
That's the one thing
you don't see a 2.5-hour video of why Fallout 4 is the best game of the year that has 2 million views. Like, the positive criticism doesn't get that. Yeah. So that's a pitfall that's very tempting to fall into.
But I think negativity, sadly, with a big part of our audience, it's what they want. They want to hear people who are pissed off about something or exposing something.
Right.
Like, anytime they can use the word admit, blah, 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 admits, meaning that they did something that they thought they were getting away with, and then they got caught, and now they have to admit that they were wrong.
Right. And it's about
kind of that whole culture.
And I just, I've never quite, I don't think, bought into that. It's like, I feel if I bought into that more, I would have been more hardline about my opinion on No Man's Sky, which I, unabashedly loved. But even in our Game of the Year thing, where I gave it my Game of the Year, I was like, I will sit there for 2 hours while you tell me everything wrong with this game, and I'll sit there and nod and agree with you. Because,
it doesn't matter. It was your favorite game.
Yeah, I loved it. It's just, and I love it more now. But it's like, if I were trying to do my own Angry Matt channel on YouTube, I would have just been screaming at people that disagreed with me that they were morons.
Nobody would have watched your video because you liked something.
Yeah, because I liked it. But if I'd made a 2-hour video about why Sean Murray should be thrown in a thresher for lying to us,
millions of views,
I would,
smash that like button.
Yeah, we'd be merging SIFTD with that channel right now.
Yeah,
for all the viewers.
Speaking of which, this is the first episode of GameFace that is going up on YouTube for everyone since episode 14. So
a long time ago.
I think we're supposed to say something like smash the like button or share or something.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Yeah. You can do it if you want. That's basically how I look at it. I think if you like it, you're going to like it. And if you like this show and you like Pactor Factor, you're going to subscribe. But
you should click the Patreon link.
That's the most important part, so nice to meet some of you guys. Some of you guys have never seen GameFace. Some of you may have watched the first handful of episodes or know me from Invisible Walls or whatever.
We're also not usually dressed this well.
Yeah, this is just for episode 100. We're usually a lot more casual. But it's nice to meet some of you guys, seeing us for the first time. Hopefully you've liked the show. This show is completely different from how GameFace is as well. Maybe we shouldn't have started off with this. The timing just kind of worked out.
It's a special episode, That's always a problem.
We're going to celebrate.
We're about to do another normal one soon.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And
if our faces don't offend you, try the next one too.
Yeah. Yeah, and those of you guys who are watching this, you're actually watching it late. You're getting it 3 or 4 days later on YouTube. If you want to see this show when it's hot and fresh, become a patron on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/SIFTD. If you didn't see it on screen the whole damn episode already. So.
Right. And speaking of disclosure, because I think, was it Marcus or Adam that mentioned about, sponsors and disclosures?
Yes.
Very important to tell people what's happening.
Yeah, we actually have a sponsor for SIFTD. First, our Patreon just kicked off. We got a sponsor right out of the gate. And we're going to deliver their ad copy right now on a live read. Welcome to our first sponsor, ExtraTurns.com. Are you tired of paying 10 to 15% commission or more selling your used games online? What if you could sell your used games commission-free, Matt?
What if?
At ExtraTurns, you can. That's right. ExtraTurns.com is a brand new marketplace being built from the ground up to sell your games, collectibles, electronics, and memorabilia. They won't charge you a thing to sell or exchange your used games, and they'll always beat their competitors in every other category. Visit extraturns.com to sign up for the site's launch. It's not even live yet. You can get in early and get your first 5 listings free. Like and share Extra Turns on Facebook and Twitter, and you can see the handles right there. And you're automatically entered to win an SNES Classic for this holiday season.
Which is probably your only shot.
Yep.
Really.
I may enter. Don't wait. Sign up for Extra Turns today to join a brand new community dedicated to gamers just like you. So there you go, extraturns.com. Thank you very much for being our first ever sponsor. And thanks to you for checking out GameFace episode 100. It's kind of a shame that we've done this many, and this may be the first episode you've ever watched, but better late than never. So
that's what the archive's for.
Yep, that is. So first of all, we'd like to thank Adam and Marcus for taking the time to do interviews with us. I mean, they honestly haven't done anything with anyone for a really long time. And so we really appreciate those guys doing episode 100 with us. We really appreciate it. Thanks to all you guys who have supported us on the Patreon already. We need more. We need a lot more. So please consider becoming a patron for SIFTD. For $2, you get Pactor Factor. For $4, you get everything else we do, including this, as well as MP3 and podcast versions of GameFace, which is nice considering how long the show is. So once again, hello to everybody for the first time, and what's up to all our old subscribers. GameFace is up and out.